Once upon a time, everything created by human civilization disappeared without a trace. Stories, technologies, art, digital data, all the knowledge accumulated over generations disappeared in an instant. Society plunged into chaos, the world was on the verge of collapse. Then a savior appeared to humanity. This is how the Zeus system was launched, the origin of which remained a mystery. This system created a virtual game called Olympus. Thanks to Zeus's capabilities, the boundary between game and reality disappeared, and Olympus became the basis for supporting a new civilization. Objects from it could be materialized into reality. About 200 years have passed. The world has changed, becoming a place where any object from the game could exist in reality. The modern era has become a prosperous society. However, the brilliant shell hit a cruel reality. The spoon class theory divided society into rich and poor. Olympus established rankings and the distribution of resources, which led to an extreme polarization of wealth. The poor remained at the bottom, while the rich became even richer. A world where it was impossible to rise from the bottom and become a hero. A world where a clay spoon could not turn into a golden spoon. Jake was one of those clay spoons, an ordinary person with low status, forced to put up with injustice. But nowhere was there a law stating that the inferior must die. When Jake was less than 10 years old, he was kidnapped by a crazy old man. He claimed that the boy was born not with a clay spoon in his mouth, but with a gap in his level and abilities. Jake spent the next 20 years in the training zone, undergoing hellish training. There he was taught that he was to become absolute evil. Now, after years of grueling training, Jake has accepted his fate, together with the holy murderer. But with the Queen of the Dead, they took the side of absolute evil. The world has changed with the advent of Olympus, where education has moved into virtual reality, and studying at the academy has become the only way to success. 20 years ago, a man obsessed with his idea kidnapped a boy, seeing his potential. He considered it a divine sign and decided to make him the strongest warrior in the world. Thus began an endless and brutal training process. This man was the embodiment of strength, and the boy could not help but admire him. His new life turned into an endless hell. Years followed each other, and the grueling training never stopped. 20 years have passed. The boy who was once kidnapped has become a grown man. He learned everything he could. The old man was pleased with his student and said that he could now die without regret. Before parting ways, the mentor handed the student a map with his future destination. It was the key to his future. The young warrior thanked his mentor for his incredible knowledge and education. When he got to his feet, the old man was no longer breathing. His journey was over. After 20 years of suffering, he finally felt free, stepping onto a new path with the help of the Line Zone. Its level was enormous. Its characteristics were incredible. However, when the system performed the identification, everything changed. Violations were detected. All levels obtained in an abnormal way were reset to 0. He was left with the first level. This was both a curse and an opportunity. He lost access to all skills and items, but the first level allowed him to grow quickly. The new start gave us a chance to become stronger than ever. He went to the startup city for newcomers, ready to start his real life. He was 26 years old, but now everything was in his hands. Jake arrived in Urkus. The city greeted him with a bustling square of vendors and a peaceful atmosphere. Everything seemed so familiar, but there was no time for nostalgia. He immediately headed for the hunting grounds. A guard stopped him at the western gate. When he heard that Jake was on the first level, he advised him to go through the eastern gate because the western zone was too dangerous. But Jake didn't listen. He fought the Toothy King using his hidden skills and won. This impressed the guard because for the first level, this is an incredible power. The next task was to defeat the Mad Boar, the thug of the western gate. Jake did it with one punch. He received a big reward for completing the quest. He went to a higher level of land. For several days he fought monsters. But suddenly the system labeled him a criminal. This was due to his low luck. He was mistaken for a wanted murderer. He was hunted by guards and players seeking hero status. In order to survive, he was forced to kill those who attacked him, which resulted in many fines. 2 weeks passed, and the harassment did not stop. Jake decided to go into hiding. He gave up on the idea of becoming a hero and decided to just enjoy life using his characteristics. However, something about it all seemed suspicious to him. Jake began to doubt, but there was no answer. The next day, the elders suddenly bowed down before him, naming him as their successor. They exclaimed that the absolute of the heavenly devil was standing before them. The system immediately activated a new higher-class quest. Throughout the history of Olympus, similar tasks have appeared only 3 times, and each time they led to cataclysms. Jake realized that the training, the curse, and this moment were all part of the same big plan. Fate drew him into a story whose scope he could not yet realize. Jake found himself in the center of a struggle for power and recognition. After a long era of chaos, the world was divided into three great powers. One of them was ruled by Garcia, known for his power and many wives. The family tree became long and complicated. This is a backstory that sheds light on Schulter's origins. He was a famous warrior of his time. He had devilish blood and was much more cruel than any other. He was feared by all the heroes of the world until he was caught. Although he was seriously wounded, Schulter went into seclusion to recuperate. Jake was under the influence of a mentor who was a descendant of Schulter. He was recognized as a temporary absolute, but his power was not flawless. Most of the elders were in favor of the return of the former absolute ruler. Jake had to enlist their support because relationships with them were an important element on the path to recognition. After taking command, he faced his first serious test. The elders helped him, which allowed him to raise his level. They were really powerful individuals. Luke, one of the elders, became a loyal ally. During the mission, they had to face a serial killer named Geralt. He was armed with twin pistols and was level 40. He was considered strong, but Luke easily defeated him with one swing of his sword, which surprised Jake. As a result, they were able to win, which brought them huge rewards in the form of gold coins. This was the first step on the way to restoring the former glory of the Heavenly Devil, a whole world of opportunities, full of threats and privileges. He must use all his resources to become a recognized ruler and regain the power and influence lost in the past. After 2 weeks of persistent battles with monsters, Jake has made significant progress in the level. He had now reached the 13th level, a growth rate that was unheard of compared to ordinary players. His real goal, however, was to reach the 40th level, as that was when he would be able to use the heaven-conquering mind technique. To do this, he planned to continue pumping and use the resources to create his own company, relying on the power of the elders. The problem with Geralt's head remained unresolved. Since Jake was involved in the regime, he could not use the services of official institutions in the game. It was also impossible to exchange in the real world. At that moment, his sister Agatha appeared, and he had an idea. He decided to offer her a deal, to hand over Geralt's head in exchange for sharing the reward. However, his sister was sure that he would not have been able to cope with such an opponent. She recalled that a few years ago she received a message from him about reaching level 99, but at the time she thought it was a fake. Agatha, convinced that his words were true, went to the mountains of Centennia. On the way, she was haunted by a strange feeling. Everything around her seemed dead, as if there were no monsters or living creatures left. At that moment, Jake suddenly appeared behind her, scaring her. He handed her Geralt's head, and she could not believe her eyes. Later, at the exchange office, the authenticity of the head was confirmed, and the quest was successfully completed. Agatha gave Jake almost the entire reward, keeping only a small portion for herself. This was only the first step. Jake realized that if he completed the main quest, the reward would be incomparably greater. To accelerate his growth, he decided to invest in the future by asking Agatha to purchase experience-enhancing artifacts for him. In return, Jake promised to give her gold coins for pocket money every month. But Agatha insisted on setting up a teleportation point. The next day, Jake went to the Jeff Mountains with Luke, focusing on pumping. However, he was in trouble. 2 people were hiding behind the trees, watching him. They considered him weak because of his basic equipment and low level, deciding that he must have died many times. After making sure that he did not even notice their presence, they prepared for battle. The system notified Jake of an attempt by external forces to seize his body. A priest stood before him. He was sure that he only needed to kill one person to elevate himself in the eyes of the other heroes. The attacking team was not going to waste any time. Captain Yoon distracted Jake so that he could not use teleportation while the others prepared to attack. The system reported that an anti-magic shot was being prepared. The enemy's great sword was of the 40th level, but its armor was not suitable for defense. Before Jake knew it, the enemy had prepared a spell. This meant that he had started preparing in advance. Jake decided to attack with his own strength using his fists, as the skills were not yet available. The enemy warned his group of the danger. They believed that Jake was using powerful magic and ordered them to retreat. The system recorded changes in the status. The killer's aura became darker and the sin became worse. However, the enemies had no intention of continuing the fight. Realizing that they were facing something they could not handle, they preferred to flee. Their captain, in desperation, called on everyone to save themselves. Jake watched as his enemies, previously confident of victory, now retreated in panic. At that moment, their leader realized that he was facing not just a mage, but a highly skilled melee player capable of using a jump. However, Jake was victorious. He killed all the attackers and reached the 16th level. His image as a man was strengthened, his loyalty increased, and his minimum requirements were confirmed. After a while, Luke invited Jake to follow him. They went to the lair of the Heavenly Devil. The journey lasted 7 days. Jake wondered why the village was so far away. The only consolation was that his skill of speed walking helped him to endure this journey. However, the lack of food was taking its toll. He had been drinking only water for the entire week. Even with his performance brought to 99, he felt tired. Finally, they arrived. The villagers greeted Jake with joy, calling him the Absolute and their savior. The system activated a small quest, rebuilding the destroyed village. The people bowed before him, and the prophet Carl told the story. Long ago, 12 elders, hiding from the Empire, searched for the descendants of the Absolute while the inhabitants of the harsh, uninhabitable land waited for his arrival. Jake wondered why they couldn't bring in supplies from outside, but it turned out to be impossible. All the residents, including the elders, were locked up here. The first task was to feed the people. He asked Luke how much longer they could survive without food and heard a frightening answer: until midnight. Jake knew that people were hungry and desperate. He realized that he was so absorbed in training that he couldn't take care of them. Now everything has changed. He vowed to give his last for them, promised that he would make it. He decided to move on with Luke. While they were outside, they had to clear out all the monsters on the way. If the loot included mana stones or useful items, they were to be brought to him. The quest seemed difficult, but Jake was confident that with a little effort he could handle it. A week after leaving, Jake and the Elder reached the Lepitzin Mountains. To speed up his return, Jake prepared everything he needed in advance. A few days ago, he asked Agatha to bring a magic bag and cans of porridge, organizing a meeting in the mountains. As payment, he offered her a blue stone that Luke had obtained during a hunt, allowing him to keep a portion of its value. In addition, he instructed her to buy 3 teleporters to shorten the journey. Meanwhile, in the Heavenly Devil village, Elder Edgar discussed Jake's actions. He expressed his dissatisfaction with the fact that Luke had left the village without securing its borders. Having called himself the successor, he had to live up to this role. However, not all the elders shared the same opinion. When Jake returned, he brought with him a huge amount of easily digestible food, gradually providing the residents with a complete diet. Residents were surprised to see what he brought. The system informed him that the closeness with the residents was increasing and their loyalty was strengthening. He realized that, in addition to food, housing and clothing needed to be improved, but for now the priority was to secure the necessary supplies. Jake asked the residents to trust him, and the system confirmed that Edgar's recognition had been received. The latter admitted that he had previously doubted him, but now saw him as a true leader. Edgar gained the status of an ideal follower, and their relationship was established as a master servant. Jake has already reached the 19th level and has received performance improvement points. It's time to try out new features and go to the next place. He decided to take Edgar with him because he had good stealth skills. However, a giant bear blocked their path in the Lepitzin Mountains. This monster was about 40 years old, usually caught by a group of 5 or 6 people. But Jake remembered his previous experience of hunting alone and decided to tackle the bear himself. The system reported the end of the hunt and he received a gold coin award. He wondered if the monster was too weak or if he himself had become too strong. Either way, they could now go to the Amantium dungeon. A few days later, Jake and Edgar arrived at the entrance to the dungeon. Inside, there were many footprints, which was not surprising because this dungeon was located near the original city. Here, you could get promotion points for completing levels of appropriate difficulty, which attracted students of academies and instructors associated with the Grand Union. Jake easily dealt with the giant bear, putting it down with one punch. He didn't know how strong the Grand Union instructors were. Not wanting to attract unnecessary attention, he ordered Edgar to follow him quietly. The safe zone of the Amantium dungeon was filled with tension. There was a lot of excitement among the students preparing for the sweep. However, their attention was drawn to something unexpected: the presence of a chaosite. One of the students rushed to report it to the instructor. The instructor reacted immediately. He was outraged that someone had dared to go so far as part of the chaos regime. While Jake was hunting monsters on his journey, he noticed a strange pattern. When he killed the creatures with his own hands, he didn't get any prey. This led him to believe that his negative academic performance seriously reduced the likelihood of dropping items. Perhaps we should have let the elders finish off the monsters to avoid this problem. Meanwhile, the tension between the instructor and Jake was growing. The instructor looked at him with disdain, and everything indicated that he was not a threat. He assumed that this chaos man had come here for easy money, to hunt students, pick up their prey, and resell it. Jake, on the other hand, had no intention of confronting anyone. His goal was to clear the dungeon and he didn't want to interfere with the students' affairs. However, the instructor did not believe a word he said. He decided to eliminate him. However, things soon got out of hand. The system announced that the safe zone of the Amantium dungeon had been deactivated due to Jake's presence. The instructor attacked, but Jake easily broke his sword with his bare hands. This caused panic among the students. When the battle began, the situation quickly deteriorated. The instructor was killed and several students were swept away by the shockwave. Panic was building, but Jake wasn't going to kill them. He just wanted to continue the cleanup. Realizing that fighting him was futile, the students preferred not to intervene. After a while, Jake continued on his way. Soon he reached the center point of the dungeon, a defensive fortress. It was an important structure that had to be destroyed before he could continue the sweep to the very end. Since he couldn't get the loot from the monsters anyway, he decided to act fast. The system warned him that the destruction of the fortress would lead to the rage of the monsters and recommended forming a team. The fortress fell with a single blow. Jake could not believe it. In any case, he didn't dwell on it. The main thing was that everything was going smoothly. Now he could finish clearing the dungeon. Later, other instructors arrived at the scene. They were surprised to find that the fortress had already been destroyed. They couldn't understand how Jake had managed to destroy the fortress so quickly on his own. In addition, there are monster skeletons in this place. The system announced that the Amantium dungeon was completely cleared. The Amantium dungeon was completely cleared, but some players were surprised by this. There were too many skeleton soldiers, and for an ordinary level 19 player, such a sweep seemed impossible. The final stage of the dungeon. However, everything went according to plan. He struck at the shield, protecting the last line, but it collapsed instantly, which seemed suspiciously easy. Realizing that he might soon be attacked by other instructors, he hurried to get out. The system confirmed the complete completion of the dungeon by awarding leveling points. Jake reached the 20th level and could now go to the Desert of Darkness. However, he felt that he was being watched. The instructors were probably waiting for him at the exit. A group of enemies gathered at the exit of the dungeon. There were more of them than he had expected, and their leader was clearly ready for battle. Jake understood where this was going and decided not to start a meaningless fight. If he just walked away now, he could avoid casualties. Thanks to Daryl's intervention, the collision was averted. However, her mind was preoccupied with the incident. When Jake entered the dungeon, the instructor and several students died. This chaos site cleared the dungeon too quickly, which could mean that he has some support. To avoid a clash, he should be persuaded to leave. Meanwhile, other players were wondering who he was. Judging by the dark aura, he was a chaosite, or perhaps even a Randall. If so, his level is probably distorted, and he's much stronger than he looks. Randall was among those observing the situation. He followed Jake and promised to kill him one day. Soon, he started thinking about his mysterious double. He was seen in different places at the same time. After leaving the dungeon, Jake went to the village of the Heavenly Devil. He had to choose a place where monsters gather in large numbers. Among the elders of the village, there was one who specialized in great magic, Jack. They set off on their journey. While Jake was preparing for the next stage, he remembered Agatha's birthday. This time he intended to play the role of a caring older brother. Upon arriving at the Desert of Darkness, he heard a system message. A monster will appear in 10 minutes. The wait seemed too long to him. Meanwhile, there was Jack, who had strong great magic. She was ready to destroy anyone who stood in her way. The Jack had to demonstrate its magic to the fullest. Soon an ominous call was heard in the desert. The coming of the god of evil had begun. The warriors of darkness marched forward, ready to destroy all enemies. The sky darkened, the atmosphere thickened, and the glory of Vladika spread across the continent. The Death Star has risen. The Death Star rises when a player in Chaos mode raises their notoriety to a certain level. However, Jake, the leader of the Heavenly Devils, continued to grow in this direction, and the system only confirmed that his charisma and the loyalty of his associates were increasing. Soon he faced a new threat. A group of enemies arrived, and one of them looked at Jake with contempt, not realizing who he was dealing with. Meanwhile, an urgent request for support was received, as the head of the Alliance was in danger. But it was too late. When the situation stabilized, a new obstacle arose, a group of monster bulls. Jake gave a command to his companion, instructing her to investigate. The battle was short-lived. The enemies fell with a single blow, and the system recorded the victory. Although he was already used to this outcome, he still hoped that at least one of the monsters would survive. The opponents watching this fight could not believe their eyes. Jake used a technique they had never seen before. Jack skillfully used her opportunities. This is why they received the award. They did not rejoice for long. The Black Bull King appeared on the battlefield. It was a monster that no one had ever seen before. He was clearly superior to the other bulls, indicating his status as the boss of the territory. Jake realized that if this monster could withstand at least one of his blows, a valuable pack of blue stones would fall out of it. At that moment, however, his companion warned him that someone was approaching with great force. At the moment, Jake was still too weak to fight the strongest opponents, so he decided not to risk it and retreat. News of the incident soon spread. In the game chat, people were discussing the Chaos Site who single-handedly destroyed all the bulls. Later, the advanced players who came after him managed to kill the Black King of Bulls, and 3 packs of blue stones fell out of it, 30 pieces each. Jake was shocked. He realized that this stone had passed literally in front of his nose. Taking into account the costs of maintaining the village of Sky Devils, commissions, and taxes, he has only 15 million left. The restrictions associated with the low level made life difficult. The only solution was to raise the level further. Meanwhile, in one of the offices, 2 men were discussing the events. One of them noted that this monster, the Black Bull King, was far superior to ordinary opponents. The newspaper said that the chaos that had caused the massacre in the desert had greatly harmed their allies. "We need to increase the number of soldiers." Chuck, the Alliance's director, instructed him to gather all the information he could about him and show him what happens to those who act alone. 3 weeks have passed. Jake raised his level to 29. Luke was worried that the long journey might harm his body, but Jake assured him that everything was fine. He could not afford to be weak. His goal was too great. He longed for the day when the whole world would bow down before the devils of heaven. The system's voice interrupted his thoughts. A new message from his sister. She said that she had received a new quest. This quest was given out all over the game world. Its name sounded convincing. The Quest of the 7 Holy Thrones. The 7 Holy Thrones quest has begun. The message says that only the combined power of all 7 thrones will be able to resist evil. The game chat actively discussed this quest. Many people assumed that 7 hidden classes would be unlocked with its completion, but no one knew who would be able to get them. Jake was also thinking about it. He didn't know which classes were connected to this quest. But if they are related to the main story of Olympus, they probably have incredible power. Agatha wondered if Jake was going to take part in the quest, but he knew that no one would give him the opportunity because he was a chaos. His sister, although busy with the tasks of the Alliance, could still try. Jake was thinking about the future. He wanted to live in peace, but circumstances forced him to become stronger. He decided to connect to Olympus. This time he went on a hike alone, which scared the elders. He realized that his movements were already known to the Empire, and therefore he had to act cautiously. Jake left the elders to guard the village, hoping that this would help him gain their approval and increase his power more quickly. After solving the food issue, the next logical step was to improve living conditions. However, the cost of food was so high that nothing else could be afforded for the time being. The only thing left to do was to raise his level and become stronger. If he reached the 40th level, he would be able to use the mind technique. In addition, he had to complete the quest with the map that he had received from his mentor. On the way, he came across a black bear, a giant that he had to deal with. And Jake did a great job with it. It helped him relieve stress, and he also learned a new skill, extremely powerful fist. His joy was overwhelming because with this skill he could get artifacts if he delivered the final blow with precision. But suddenly he felt a presence behind him. Someone had crept up on him. He was being hunted by Randall, a man who wanted to capture him and hand him over to the Grand Alliance. Jake did not know him, which puzzled Randall himself. Randall used his main weapon, the Nail of Death. Jake activated the extremely powerful fist skill, but he missed the first time. He lacked accuracy. Randall turned out to be more cunning than he expected. Things didn't go according to Jake's plan. Jake realized that he didn't have enough strength at the moment, but he had no choice. Randall activated his heart attack skill. Jake, on the other hand, decided to turn off his powers and fight with ordinary fist bumps. They engaged in close combat. There was a blinding flash. Randall lost. His attack with the heart attack skill was successful, but the enemy didn't even flinch. Jake didn't understand how a player of this level could die so quickly. The blow did not cause him any significant damage, and Randall himself was now lying on the ground, dead. All his protective spells were broken in an instant. After Randall's death, not a single item fell out of his body. All his equipment was destroyed in the battle. Jake realized that the enemy, even at level 50, posed no threat to him. He was ready for more difficult challenges for hunting creatures of a much higher rank. But Randall's spirit was not going to let things stand. Even after his death, he vowed to find Jake and finish him off. However, fate decreed otherwise. The system's voice announced that Randall was bound by the soul slavery skill. A hooded man immediately appeared, pleased with his find. He managed to get hold of a first-class corpse, and luck was clearly on his side. The system imposed a special ban and Randall came back to life. Now he was bound by a spell. The hooded man told him to do 10 push-ups. When he did not comply, he was immediately pierced by unbearable pain. Realizing his helplessness, Randall decided to play a trick. If this person wants to get hold of Jake's body, then maybe he can help him with that. Meanwhile, Jake and Agatha were sitting at McDonald's. He suddenly began to show her special attention, buying everything she wanted. But the reason for this was a request. His luck has been disastrous lately, not only with monsters but also with players. Even when he killed enemies, he couldn't get anything of value. Up until that point, he had always had people around him to help him, but now the situation had changed. He realized that in such a situation, his allies would only become a burden to him. That is why he suggested that Agatha open a company. However, it was not easy to start a business in such conditions. Agatha thought about it, but Jake had already made up his mind. He knew exactly what he was going to do. At that time, an important meeting was taking place in the Alliance's conference room. Director Chuck reminded everyone of the recent losses in the Desert of Darkness. They talked about a chaos site that doesn't attack unless you touch it. The president of the Alliance explained that this is why the recommendations were sent. When meeting with such a chaos, if he does not have items, it is better to leave him alone. But that chaos player was not Randall. They were shown a video of a recent fight between Randall and the same chaos player. It was not easy to get such footage, and it impressed the audience. Based on the analysis of the video, it was assumed that the Chaosite is a high-level melee fighter and possibly the owner of a hidden class. They received a quest from one of the nobles to catch Colt. They didn't look alike, but the system somehow identified this Chaosite as Colt, which caused misunderstandings among the Alliance members. Killing him meant the end of the mission. Some members of the Alliance had their doubts. It was easier to hunt those whose whereabouts were at least roughly known than to try to find Colt, whom no one could track. However, it was decided to send a group of 30 people. The allies would be used as cannon fodder to weaken the enemy, and then they would be finished off. The financial issue was quickly resolved. The families of the victims would be paid a considerable sum as consolation, and those who contributed to the raid were to receive 3 million won. However, everyone realized that human lives did not matter much here. The only thing that mattered was that the money should flow into the pockets of the right people, namely the president of the Alliance. The Leprechaun Mountains greeted Jake and his sister with silence, broken only by rare gusts of wind. The girl brought everything he asked for, but she couldn't hide her surprise. The spells he had requested were only basic and intended for beginners. Their effectiveness was much lower than that of the Master Class spells, but Jake didn't attach any importance to that. He realized that he wouldn't have time to study during the class change, so he wanted to start small. Despite his abilities, he still hadn't changed classes. This amazed his sister. With such characteristics, he could have chosen the path of a warrior or a magician a long time ago, but he continued to remain classless. However, Jake believed that even a simple technique in the right hands could be deadly. He was convinced that the characteristics decide much more than the class itself. To test his theory, he suggested starting with the magic of healing. Despite its simplicity with its parameters, even basic healing should have had a tangible effect. As expected, the life streak was completely filled. Then he strengthened his sister, offering her to test her new abilities in battle. At that moment, a huge giant bear appeared in front of them. My sister was shocked. Usually such monsters were killed in a group, but now she had to cope alone. However, 3 minutes later, the system announced that the hunt was over. She could not believe that she had earned 5 million won on her own. Under normal circumstances, if they handed over the monster to the Union, they would have received only 100,000 won as a reward. But by acting independently, they kept all the loot. Jake and Agatha decided to go to the Desert of Darkness to level up to the 45th level. Once in the desert, she used the Lightning Strike spell. She destroyed another monster, for which her brother happily congratulated her. Among the loot was a blue stone, incredibly valuable. Despite the fact that this place used to be popular, there were almost no hunters here now. However, suddenly a man tried to attack Jake. He quickly dealt with the enemy in one blow. Everyone thought it was a low-level one, so the hunters attacked first, not expecting resistance. But if the enemy attacked first, all their prey became theirs. Soon a whole squad of high-level fighters from the Alliance appeared in front of them. Agatha wanted to escape, but it was too late. The system announced that they could not leave the area until the battle was over. Jake remained calm, suggesting that his sister back off a bit so as not to appear to be his ally. He was not going to attack first if they kept their distance. However, their leader, Director Jin, decided to use the magic of control. The system notified Jake of an attempt to capture his mind, but he successfully resisted. Then the enemy moved into action. The tankers created a magical breakthrough, and the long-range fighters prepared to attack. They thought they could block his magic, but they didn't take into account one thing. Jake had excellent melee skills. The mages formed a combo attack, hoping to destroy him with basic spells. However, their expectations were shattered. Despite the fact that he used only simple magic, his power was beyond measure. In a flash, all the enemies were dead. Even if he was a high-level mage, his control resistance should have been higher, but he continued to stand still. Jake decided to use the fireball again, but its recharge was not yet complete. He wanted to cast this spell several times in a row to finally finish off his enemies. His sister looked at him in fear. She could no longer consider her brother a reasonable person. The system announced that the fireball skill currently has a reload time of 50 seconds. This annoyed Jake. The distant fighters received a command to prepare for a large-scale attack. Jean, one of the participants in the battle, sent an urgent request for support. They needed a tanker of level 30 or higher capable of setting up a protective magic barrier. The message was addressed to NATO President Johnson himself. Soon it became clear that the information they had received earlier was wrong. This boy was much more cunning than they had expected. Johnson and his men rushed to the rescue, asking to hold him at all costs. The distant fighters launched an attack, taking advantage of the fact that the enemy, in their opinion, was tied up. They acted methodically, not giving him a second to counterattack. However, it soon became clear that Jake was not connected at all. He instantly used the fireball, forcing everyone to retreat in panic. Attempts to block his movement failed. Then President Johnson declared that the transfer of the support quest had become a priority. When they learned that they could get a promotion for participating in it, even more players immediately joined. Soon, about 200 fighters gathered against Jake. They were sure that they had nothing to fear against one exhausted opponent. However, the attacks that were launched at him had no effect. Even if he took damage, his recovery rate was incredible. Jake didn't pay attention to what was happening. His main priority was to win. Meanwhile, Agatha began to worry about Jake. In an attempt to help, she used the lightning technique. At the same moment, the system created a special professional quest. Jake felt the change. He received the title of Heavenly Death Star, a rare and powerful title. He realized that the deeper he plunged into sin, the higher his loyalty to the Heavenly Devil became. The players around him couldn't figure out whether he was a mage or a fighter. His hidden class was a mystery to them. Johnson recalled the legend of the Commander's Child, a hidden class that appeared 40 years ago. Then one careless shot killed its owner, which meant that such classes could have significant weaknesses. The fight continued, but Jake easily dealt with the attackers. His only weakness was his lack of long-range combat skills. He needed to raise his level as soon as possible and master the technique of large-scale attacks. Agatha offered to conduct several experiments on him. It was her quest. She used strikes, changing her skills each time, but even after that, Jake's recovery remained phenomenal. Soon, the system announced that Agatha had activated an achievement that reduces the resistance of enemies with a sin tag. She had a chance to reveal her brother's true identity. After a long battle, Agatha realized that Jake holds the title of Heavenly Death Star. Jake panicked and decided to run away under the guise of fighting monsters. The system announced this to Agatha. He overcame the monsters and moved forward. The system notified the sister that the conditions for completing the class quest were fully met. One of the seats among the 7 holy thrones is now occupied. This place went to Agatha. The atmosphere in the Alliance's conference room was tense. President Johnson addressed the audience, saying that the organization was facing serious difficulties. The failure of the quest due to misinformation led to massive disappointment among traders, which dealt a devastating blow to the Alliance. Despite the crisis, the Alliance's leadership decided to continue the failed quest. The president expressed hope that after successful completion of the task, each participant would receive promotion points and the situation would stabilize. However, the key task remained to restore the lost relationships with partners. This time, it was planned to involve secret funds, as well as to use connections in Olympia to order the assassination. One of the best groups of assassins, Sarmak, was chosen to execute the order. The negotiations went quickly. For 1 billion gold, the murder was to be executed within 3 days. However, to guarantee success, a second influential group, the Black Flowers, was also involved. The president considered this the best option, given the potential benefits of eliminating chaos. Soon, the system notified Johnson that he was being hunted. He was killed before he could realize anything. The next moment, he realized that he had remained in good shape until he logged out. On the floor in front of him was a card with the symbol of Black Flowers. This meant only one thing. He was sentenced to death. Sarmak confirmed the successful completion of the order. The head of the organization, Johann, made an unexpected decision. Despite having loyal subordinates, he decided to personally investigate the target. Over the 30 years of Sarmak's existence, he has invested a lot of energy in his work, but he has not yet found a true absolute ruler. Now he has a chance. Meanwhile, Agatha reached the 30th level, which surprised Jake. Her class was changed to the Holy See, and her new title was Pure White Wizard. This meant that it became one of the 7 Holy Thrones, and its level could grow without the need to obtain upgrade points. She is now recognized as a Platinum-level hero, a rare achievement. However, Jake guessed that this title had other implications. A few days later, in the dungeon of the elevator, Jake successfully killed the giant black bear, completing another task. Meanwhile, Agatha collected awards. He decided to continue hunting monsters while his sister replenished her potions and items. It was a good chance to level up. But at that moment, Johann appeared in front of him. Sarmak's head looked at him with cold determination. He had come to see for himself whether the Chaos Site was the absolute celestial devil he claimed to be. Johann warned that if Jake did not pass his test, death would be waiting for him wherever he went. The system immediately activated a new high-ranked quest to attack Elder Johann II, the attack of Elder Johann. This man, one of the 12 elders of the Celestial Devil, was a master of surprise attacks and acted secretly, remaining in the shadows. Jake needed to avoid his attack and earn his recognition. Otherwise, the situation could have become critical. As he aspired to the title of Absolute Ruler, he realized that without the recognition of the elders, his path would be much more difficult. After Agatha's stabbing by the Holy See, he became increasingly aware of his role in this scenario. Johann looked at him carefully, expecting him to raise his weapon. However, Jake simply did not have it. He felt that the elder knew this very well, but still forced him to prove his qualifications. Jake explained the situation by saying that soon some of the restrictions imposed on him would disappear. For now, he was indeed the personification of weakness, but that would change over time. They had only to wait a little longer and a real absolute ruler would appear before them. Johann listened carefully to his words. Jake knew that if he hadn't stalled, he would have lost. However, now he had only a little to do. Go outside, destroy a few monsters, and complete the accumulation of experience points. He left the dungeon, confident that he could do it in a minute. But the situation was different. There were no monsters around. Usually there were bears and skeletons at every turn, but now they have been blown away. The law of meanness in action. His cursed luck played a cruel joke on him again. There were 30 seconds left. The monsters did not appear. Johann would not give him extra minutes. Suddenly I heard a whisper from Agatha. She brought a whole horde of monsters with her. Jake couldn't believe his luck. He immediately rushed into action. The bear fell under his blows, and the system announced the successful completion of the hunt. Experience points have reached the limit. The level has been increased. Without wasting any time, he activated the skill, Mind That Conquers the Heavens. At the same moment, a feeling of incredible power pervaded his entire body. All of his characteristics increased dramatically, and his dominion over the celestial devil intensified. It was as if a step from failure turned into a leap to absolute power. Johann could not ignore what had happened. The system recognized Jake as absolute evil, a man capable of destroying peace and order. Now he had to go down a bloody road of destruction, challenging the whole world. Realizing what was happening, Johann knelt down before Jake, recognizing him as his lord. He sincerely regretted his doubts and swore an oath of allegiance. The quest was successfully completed. But before he could enjoy his victory, he received a message from Agatha. The news of the emergence of absolute evil was being discussed online. When she saw Jake's stats increase by 19 points and cross 100, she even started to get jealous. Agatha disconnected from Olympus, not realizing that Jake is the man everyone is looking for. He thought about how to tell his sister. However, at that moment, Johann sounded the alarm. Uninvited guests appeared in the dungeon. They mistook Jake for Colt and put a price on his head. But Jake didn't understand why he was called Colt's name every time he met him. The knights realized they had a chance to regain control of the situation. They prepared to attack. However, Jake, using the technique of the mind conquering the heavens, could sense their power, intentions, and even thoughts. He quickly realized that these knights were too low level, which made him disappointed. The leader of the warriors, Byron, clearly underestimated him, despite the fact that he had already lost his unit in the previous battle. Jake didn't wait for the attack and was the first to go on the offensive. Byron was able to block the shot for a while, but Jake immediately applied a knockout punch, instantly destroying his opponent. The system announced that Byron had been killed. A few quick moves, almost effortlessly, and the battle was over. All that was left was to wait for the reward. Suddenly, a man in a hood appeared next to me. He smiled as he announced that from now on, Jake would be his slave. Randall confirmed his words, emphasizing that the new owner has full authority. Jake immediately felt the danger. A necromancer was standing in front of him. This man clearly possessed a hidden class that allows him not only to resurrect the dead, but to bring them back with full awareness and memories. Byron appeared before Jake again. He immediately swore allegiance to his new master, signing a contract of the soul. Now he belonged to the darkness. The system has recorded a new achievement: the activation of the title effect, Absolute Evil. The energy of black magic opposed the technique of the mind, but could not overcome it. The necromancer's aura began to weaken. The hooded man was confused. His resurrected ones were not obeying his orders. Angry, Jake ordered them to return to oblivion and they disappeared. Even Randall realized that he wanted to serve Jake. Suddenly, for fun, Jake ordered him to do 10 jumps with his arms to the side. Randall complied unconditionally. Jake realized that the necromancer was now in his power. Realizing that resistance was pointless, the necromancer begged for mercy. Jake allowed him to leave, and he gratefully accepted the chance. Randall realized that in order to survive, he had to be polite to Jake. After leaving the virtual space of Olympus, the necromancer realized that he was faced with a force that surpassed everything he knew. However, a woman was hiding under the hood. She was sure Jake was exactly who her mentor had been talking about, the only ruler destined to conquer this world. Meanwhile, Johann gave Jake valuable information about the Sarmak group. This organization consisted of upper-class assassins capable of eliminating even elite knights. There was fierce competition within it, and the entrance competitions led to the death of the weak. In addition, Sarmak had close ties to the Empire's government and finances. Johann also revealed financial secrets. Sarmak's operating fund was 2 billion, and his personal savings were 4 billion. All this was intended for the Absolute Emperor. The system confirmed the successful completion of the Johann's attack quest. As a reward, Jake received full control of Sarmak and an additional 6 billion in compensation. Realizing the importance of stability, Jake instructed Johann to maintain the structure of the organization. Also, part of the funds was to go to the development of the Heavenly Devil Village. Johann vowed without hesitation to follow his new master everywhere. Now Jake held the most powerful organization in his hands, and the path was becoming clearer. However, Johann warned him about a third elder who was even more dangerous. This man never gave any warning before the attack and acted with ruthless precision. He headed the Black Flowers organization and was considered a deadly opponent. Meanwhile, Agatha was waiting for her friend Jessica at a cafe. She said hello and apologized for being late. Agatha listened attentively to Jessica as she told her about the latest events in her life. Talking to her friend brought Jessica relief. Thanking her for her support, she said goodbye. Upon returning home, Agatha immediately decided to share what she had heard with her brother. Jessica told her about the concept of absolute evil. It turned out that there were classes among the players designed to support him. Jessica had a hidden class, Absolute Necromancer, designed specifically to help absolute evil. She decided to disclose this information to her brother because she realized that this knowledge could be important to him as the absolute evil. When Jake heard this, he tried to deny his true situation. But Agatha, who had long suspected the truth, only pretended to be ignorant so that he would confess to everything himself. Her suspicions were heightened by the fact that black monsters repeatedly appeared in the places where he appeared, as well as by system messages about the birth of absolute evil and a sharp increase in its characteristics. Moreover, after Agatha attacked Jake, she was granted the seventh throne. Despite knowing the truth, Agatha was cautious. If this secret became known, the whole world would become their enemy. The next day, in the mountains, Jake wondered how a necromancer with such a low level could have captured Randall, who was at level 50. She who left the academy to study necromancy had only the 14th level. Agatha suggested that her brother use the mask to hide from the Empire and the Union. She made an appointment with them in advance, to which they came wearing masks. It was important for Jessica to find out how Agatha and Jake met, but it turned out that they were only relatives. She was disappointed when she learned that Agatha had been a saint all along and had been hiding it from her. Jessica received a quest that was supposed to make her absolute evil. To confirm her words, she took out a scroll left to her by her teacher. When Jake saw the map, he was genuinely surprised. On the map, a destination was marked that coincided with the one his mentor was supposed to give Jake. In the corner of the map, he noticed a familiar symbol, a sign of the technique he had been taught. This pattern, as his mentor explained, personified him, the Black Flame. Jake realized that Jessica's power was really about absolute evil and decided to help her develop her potential. To begin with, they needed to raise its 14th level. For several days, they hunted monsters, increasing her experience. Jake's tutor, Randall, was responsible for collecting the artifacts, which greatly simplified the process. Jessica was still fighting alone, so it was difficult for her to fully control her abilities. Instead of her, her evil spirits acted in battles. In the current situation, when the elders could not act freely and involve players, the undead became a powerful trump card, allowing for a quantitative war. Jessica turned out to be the best possible ally. When Jessica reached the 20th level, she hugged Jake, expressing her gratitude without hiding her joy. Now they could start the task. Their goal was on the continent of Runia. Agatha and Jessica had to go there through the Imperial teleporter. Jake and Randall had to catch up with them using the Union teleporter. Traveling by sea would take too much time. Therefore, teleportation remained the best option. When the two Chaosites headed for the teleporter, the leader of the teleporter control group was waiting for them with some confidence. Jake and Randall felt anxious but hid their emotions. It was necessary to pay a considerable sum for using the teleport. In front of the guard, Jake instructed Randall to pretend to be older. However, the standard teleporter rates did not apply to those who were Chaosites, so the guard demanded an incredibly large sum from them. The guard then addressed Jake directly. He asked if he was tired of this life, the life of a pet, and offered to help him if he did as he said. Everything was going according to plan, and apparently Jake's plan worked. The girls arrived at the specified place. Jessica looked at the map with concern, but no matter how hard she looked, the road remained unclear to her. Agatha moved confidently, knowing exactly where she was going. Meanwhile, Jake tried to convince the guard to help him. Following a prearranged plan, he acted together with Randall. The first step was to stun the guard with a huge amount of money. The first part of the plan worked, and soon they were teleported to the right place. Once there, they acted out the second part, an innocent fight drawing attention to themselves. The plan went exactly as planned. 5 guards rushed Randall. The last of them fought Jake. In the midst of the battle, Randall used his heart attack skill. Randall, having dealt with the attackers, rushed to Jake's aid. The guard, realizing that he had no chance, tried to pay off a large sum of money, hoping to save his life. However, this only made Randall angry. He set tough conditions for the guard. 130 million gold for his life. The guard, realizing that he had no choice, agreed. As soon as the amount was transferred, the transaction was completed. However, there was no mercy. The guard was killed instantly. Jake donated part of the money to his pet. Then he went to the continent of Runia. Soon he met Jessica and Agatha. Jessica provided important information. From time to time, a monster of incredible strength would appear in the neighborhood. Even a team of experienced fighters of the 50th level was completely destroyed when faced with this creature. 3 days passed. Jessica has raised her level to 23 and Agatha to 33. By killing enemies, Jessica resurrected them, thereby increasing their number, which helped her gain experience faster. Soon they reached the place specified in their task. In front of them stood a sheer cliff, which they had to climb on their own without using magic. When Jake looked up, he spotted a bird rapidly approaching. This is the cruel Korea, the Lord of the Mountains. This giant bird had a unique feature. Eating blue stones made it stronger. Before Jake could react, Korea grabbed him by the shoulders with her powerful paws and lifted him into the air. He did not panic, but rather thought about how to tame it. But before he started, he decided to warm up his fists a bit by attacking the chicken. Soon he managed to tame Korea with coins, as they were her favorite treat. Agatha and Jessica climbed on the bird, and the three went to the top of the cliff. However, when he got there, Jake couldn't immediately find the place indicated on the map. After some thought, he came to the conclusion that to find it, he needed to fly at an incredible speed. Soon his guess was confirmed. A hidden area appeared in front of him. However, it was not easy to get it. The system set a strict condition. 200 monsters living in the mountains had to be sacrificed, and it had to be done within 5 minutes. Jake suddenly had the idea that the monsters Jessica had resurrected could be useful for their purpose. For Jessica, however, this decision was not an easy one. She was sorry to kill those she had resurrected. Her mentor's words came to mind. In order to rise to a position where you are above the darkness, you need to take the first step. In Jake's opinion, this is the moment. But Jessica was torn by internal doubts. If she didn't make a decision, their paths would part here and forever. Jake wasn't going to work with someone who couldn't overcome her own thoughts and do what was necessary. Jessica had to make up her mind. Either she makes the sacrifice and stays with them, or everyone goes their separate ways. In the end, she agreed. The process of sacrifice has begun. Almost immediately, she was in unbearable pain. Jake, noticing this, activated the basic healing skill to ease her suffering. As a result, 200 heads were absorbed, and this allowed the opening of the Rock of the Century. The gate has changed, becoming the Celtic heritage. They moved forward. The place they found themselves in resembled an underground cave. Since this was the legacy left by the mentor himself, The likelihood that they would go through a real hell was extremely high. The system required the consent of 3 assistants. Jessica was the first to give her consent. Agatha followed her. Their feathered companion was the last to agree. As soon as all the conditions were met, a portal leading to the test opened in front of them. Jake had no idea what was in store for them. However, he was ready for anything. At the same time, Ben, the leader of the Grand Union's teleport control team, was furious. He was deceived. Jake and Randall crossed the road for the wrong reason. Ben was determined to capture Jake alive. At that moment, the phone rang. His brother John was on the other end of the line. He had just taken the first Holy See. Now he has a new goal, to catch Jake and hand him over to his brother. They split up. Jake had a test to pass. Soon a giant black raven appeared in front of him. The hunt was successful. The battle with the bird reminded him of his childhood days. After the victory, the system notified him of the level increase. Meanwhile, Agatha faced a giant bat. Using a lightning strike, she managed to win. Its level has also increased. Elsewhere, Jessica fought knights. After defeating them, she restored her fallen soldiers by healing them. The bird wasted no time in fighting the poisonous earthworm. Having won it, he received a blue stone as a reward. The test was completed and everyone was reunited again. At this point, the system spoke in the voice of a mentor. His words made it clear to Jake that the higher-end quest, the absolute evil title, and the main scenario were now combined. The way was to destroy the Empire and create a new world of the Heavenly Devil. The last words of the mentor concerned a child with a pure and innocent soul who was to play a key role in the future conquest of the world. The conditions for passing the test were met, and the reward was impressive, a red stone worth a lot of money. In addition, the rank of the bird has increased. Jake, observing its behavior, assumed that it was a male, judging by the way it showed off to the ladies. Soon he also perfected his technique, bringing it to a true technique of the mind conquering the heavens. At this time, John, the first Holy See, followed in Jake's footsteps. They witnessed a bird flying from the top of a cliff, carrying people. Among them, they noticed Jake, who has an incredibly strong aura. Jake has improved his performance tremendously. Watching this process, Jessica could not hide her admiration. They successfully cleared the field of Celtic heritage. Rising into the air, they left the gorge. Looking down, they noticed that the bounty hunters were already waiting for them. They were still convinced that Jake was the colt they were hunting. John flew into the air from the crowd of hunters. He flew closer and greeted Jake with joy. The other bounty hunters were shocked at how easily he flew in the air. Cameras immediately started filming the action, capturing every moment. Wasting no time, John activated the flame attack technique. However, his fire only hit a few of the bird's feathers, and it did not hesitate to fly forward, attacking John with its talons. A strong blow threw him into a rock. When he first felt such power, he was stunned. John was seized with anger. Undeterred, he used the technique of fire armor, increasing his defense and preparing for a new attack. Jessica and Agatha wanted to intervene to help Jake, but he made it clear that this was not necessary. Jake realized that John was weakened. His strength was no longer the same as before. Using all his strength, Jake activated the technique of an extremely strong punch. The forces clashed and John's fire armor cracked. However, he survived, not allowing this blow to completely crush him. Jake knew that he had to be especially careful with such an opponent. He decided to irritate him by calling him mediocre, completely dependent on his equipment. In fact, John was a member of the 3rd generation of spoons, but it was hard for him to realize how a chaosite could look down on him. Enraged, he activated the explosive fire flower, his most powerful attack. Jake realized that John was already struggling to the limit of his abilities. He couldn't risk the girls, so he ordered the bird to guard them and he joined the battle. John, realizing that his defeat was inevitable, decided to quit the game to avoid disgrace. He didn't want his defeat to be posted online. He immediately ordered his novice to take control of the media. He was not going to let people think he was dead. Meanwhile, Jake and his bird flew together. The bird, remembering how the fire burned its wings, came to a single conclusion. The owner will kill anyone who catches his eye. So from that moment on, he decided to become exceptionally obedient. Jake arrived at the Heavenly Devil's lair dealing with case reports. The harsh winter was approaching, and the residents needed warm clothes, and every house needed a stove. Elder Churty calculated that it would take 800 million gold coins. Jake was sorry to part with such a sum, but he still agreed to give the money. The elder was amazed by the generosity of her lord, and the residents grew to respect him. Meanwhile, Johann met with an elder of the Black Flowers. Their conversation was about an absolute ruler. However, Rexor was not going to serve someone weaker than himself. For him, it was unacceptable that a person who was inferior to him should become the lord of the House of Black Flowers. Jake advised Agatha to pay more attention to developing her abilities rather than following him around. However, she did not want to back down. Jake's next mission was to explore the river that flows through the sky. Agatha was shocked. In this place, the divine star monopolized the extraction of resources and firmly held the territory under its control. That's why Jake decided to go there. He learned that many members of the Monster Alliance were headed to the same region to establish an uninterrupted supply of red stones. Realizing the importance of magical support, Jake decided to bring along Jack, who specialized in powerful spells. Jake didn't want to flaunt his title of absolute evil, but he wasn't going to hide it either. He asked Jack to activate visibility hiding to avoid unnecessary attention. Randall suggested that Jake become the undead in order to stay with him in the future. Agatha did not hesitate to strike Randall with lightning. Jessica, in turn, resurrected him. After that, Randall became even stronger. The team decided to move in pairs to avoid unexpected attacks. When they arrived at the teleporter, the locals were amazed at their appearance. The chaos accompanied by the giant eagle caused a lot of excitement. Despite this, the management ordered the guards to let them through the portal. Arriving at their destination, Jake felt that they were being watched from behind the trees. A full-scale attack soon followed. However, he was fully prepared for this. Randall put up a shield to try to protect himself from the flames that engulfed everything around him. At that moment, Jessica appeared, shocked to see the battlefield turned into a burning wasteland. She did not understand what happened and how the fire spread so quickly. Meanwhile, the director of the Grand Union of the Divine Star, Tate, watched the proceedings with growing frustration. Everything was much more boring than he had expected. However, his opinion changed dramatically when he saw that his opponents were still alive. They were floating in the sky on a huge bird. Soon they jumped down, preparing for a second attack. Randall took out his camera, intending to record everything that was happening. At this time, another Union director known as the Lumberjack ordered Jake to surrender. Formally, his crime is that he illegally invaded the territory of the Union. However, Jake did not recognize this accusation. He did not understand why his presence here was considered a violation. The woodcutter felt afraid. The energy coming from Jake was overwhelming. Jessica, meanwhile, was calling her soldiers, preparing for battle. Jake, using his speed, was instantly next to the lumberjack. He didn't even have time to react. Just one base hit, and the lumberjack was defeated. The dead soldiers were ordered to kill anyone who was still resisting. They rushed to attack. But Jake activated his mind technique that conquered the heavens. Tanks tried to stop him. He dealt with them in one fell swoop, moving forward without any difficulty. Meanwhile, a meeting of the directors was taking place in the main hall of the Divine Star Union. They were furious. They were helpless, unable to stop the chaos. The reputation of the Union was undermined. Jessica, not wanting to admit defeat, used her power and resurrected the dead soldiers. The order was to kill the remaining soldiers. One of the soldiers tried to resist the will of others, but the pain was unbearable. In the midst of the battle, Jake struck again. For this, he received a set of red stones. However, before he could comprehend the situation, 3 representatives of the small union appeared before him. They were holding a legendary artifact, the 3-handed sword of the deity. They demanded that Jake surrender and submit to justice. Randall warned that their opponents are determined. Kirk, who has a hidden martial arts class in close combat, an assassin who is proficient in sword-related techniques, and Tom, who specializes in defense. Kirk was the first to attack, using the lion's fist. However, Jake stopped his punch with his bare hands and then threw the attacker away with a light movement. Tom, who was watching, was shocked. At this point, the Trinity tried to lure Jake to their side. However, he made it clear that his goal was to destroy the existing monopoly system. Meanwhile, Rental continued to film what was happening. The negotiations finally broke down and the battle began. Kirk was too weak in front of Jake and was cut to pieces. The Blade Killer realized that attacking Jake was futile and decided to change his tactics, directing his attack at the others. His first target was Jessica. However, before he could strike, Johann suddenly appeared. His power-destroying sword fell upon the murderer, instantly destroying him. Panic gripped everyone present. No one could understand why the head of Sarmak suddenly appeared here and started killing everyone in a row. Soon after, Jack appeared and used her magic to finish off the remaining enemies. Tom, realizing that the forces were unequal, tried to start negotiations again, but Jake was not interested in that. He attacked him with a simple punch, which was enough to disable his opponent. The system rewarded him with gold coins. Randall wasted no time in collecting awards from his defeated opponents. When Jake looked at the booty, he was shocked. Something was wrong. He immediately ordered his men to climb on the bird and fly as high as possible into the sky. Johann and Jack were ordered to prepare for battle. He didn't know exactly what was going on, but he felt that something dangerous was coming. The system suddenly activated an unexpected quest to attack a boss monster. Absolute evil descended to the earth. Horrible creatures appeared in front of Jake and his friends. The great crested, the water, and the two-headed chimeras. These monsters were so huge that Jessica was in awe of their terrifying appearance. However, Johann realized that the battle against them would be extremely difficult. Jack and Johann himself could not cope with such an opponent, and Jake, being under the influence of restrictions, was at a disadvantage. Therefore, Johann offered to retreat, but Jake was not going to leave. He decided to defeat the monsters right now. The next moment, there was a powerful outburst of the true energy of the mind, conquering the heavens. This force was so overwhelming that the creatures could not even move. They were completely paralyzed by fear. They realized that they were facing something much more terrifying than themselves. They had no chance of survival. Johann and Jack watched in awe of what was happening. They realized that they had witnessed something truly grand. Meanwhile, at the headquarters of the Divine Star Union, the situation was tense. The director of the Grand Alliance, Hong, presented the report on Jake. They did not expect him to be so strong. His strength did not correspond to the generally accepted norms. Obviously, he was a strategically important threat. The president of the Divine Star Union, Kang, made the final decision. Jake was sentenced to life imprisonment. This chaos was opposed to the existing society, and he also had allies. The president has put forward a hypothesis that he is the embodiment of absolute evil. Thus, his main goal is to plunge society into chaos. However, first of all, they had to corner him. Despite all his incredible strength, he was alone. It was a war for control, a war for power. The Union of the Divine Star was ready to do anything for the sake of peace, where the elite ruled over ordinary people. Jake struck the final blow, ending the hunt for the three monsters. Everything went well, and he was rewarded with 3 black stones. Among all the existing stones, this one was considered to be of the highest quality. Jake couldn't hide his joy. Success was on his side. However, his celebration was interrupted by the appearance of unexpected guests. He was visited by the director of the Grand Union, known as the Blue Heart, and the president of the Justice Union, known as the Captain. Their visit was clearly not accidental. Johann suddenly approached them, but Jake, not seeing them as a threat, ordered them to leave them alone. Meanwhile, the guests offered him to join their ranks, explaining the conditions in detail. However, Jake was not interested at all. The offers were not lucrative enough for him to even consider them. The captain did not give up. He tried to convince Jake again, assuring him that the Justice Alliance was determined to seize the opportunity. However, his words did not impress Jake. He already had another idea in mind. He was thinking about how best to use the black stone to start rumors and attract attention. Suddenly, the phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Jessica was on the other end of the line. She asked him directly if he wanted to join her and Agatha. Jake arrived at the cafe. He did not intend to come here, but circumstances forced him to. Agatha decided it would be a good idea to get together and shared his number with Jessica. Their frivolous act required consequences, and Jake intended to tell them off. In their position, one should be very careful. It was important to make a clear distinction between what they call each other in different circumstances. Jessica and Agatha felt anxious seeing his seriousness. They realized that Jake wasn't just angry, he was trying to convey the importance of their secrecy. After a short conversation, he left the cafe, having more pressing matters to attend to. Meanwhile, Randall made a list of items and handed it to Jake. He did a great job, and Jake, appreciating his efforts, patted him on the head. Among the things found was something interesting: a stone that records video. It belonged to a security guard who was willing to pay a large sum of money to get his bag back. However, Jake did not feel any sympathy for him. He ordered Johann to remove the guard. At this time, Ben was thinking about Jake. He recognized its power but could not ignore the fact that he was facing the same chaos. A man who challenged the whole world himself. Now all the major alliances in the country were against him, and his path was becoming increasingly dangerous. A large organization's office receives urgent information. The Black Stone has been discovered in the world, and it must be retrieved at any cost. This artifact had incredible properties. According to research, it contained an infinite supply of energy and could control natural disasters. However, a serious problem arose. Its owner refused to sell it. The reason was simple: he simply did not like potential buyers. Agatha was angry because of the many false articles spread by journalists. Jessica was also outraged, as she believed that Jake was a good man and did not deserve to be vilified. Jake himself was well aware of the value of the Black Stone and knew that the Divine Star organization would want to get it at all costs. However, he was not going to sell the stone to them, even if they offered him all his property. Instead, he and Surti decided to organize an auction and sell it for fabulous money. The day of the auction came. The auction was organized in the abandoned Colosseum. Influential people from all over the world gathered. Jake and the elders carefully prepared for the event. One of the main rules of the auction was the complete absence of weapons. To ensure security, Sarmak's assassins were stationed around the perimeter, ready to stop any attempt at violence. As soon as Jake announced the opening of the auction, a fierce struggle for the possession of the black stone began. The bids were rising at an incredible rate. In the midst of the bidding, the president of the Middle East North named Randall made a stunning offer of 50 trillion gold coins. However, before the auction could come to a close, the situation changed dramatically. An unknown man appeared at the Colosseum. In the name of absolute evil, he was ordered to destroy all those present. The threat was serious, and Jake immediately ordered Johann to stop the attacker. The explosion was incredibly powerful. Luke was worried about the participants, but being experienced fighters, they withstood the destructive wave without any problems. Meanwhile, Johann was already interrogating one of the detainees, trying to find out who was behind the attack. The man, realizing that he would not be able to reveal the truth, preferred to commit suicide, leaving Johann without answers. A blond man who was among the participants was not surprised by the incident. He had foreseen this incident in advance, so he immediately made it clear to Jake that he was not going to act against him. Jake admitted that he had 2 more black stones, but he would not sell them until he found out who had started the riots. Moreover, he stated that even if the customer was identified, he would still not hand over the stones to the Divine Star Union. A question was raised from the stands about the reason for this decision. Jake said he just didn't like them. Gradually, the guests of the auction left, and only the winner of the auction remained. He handed over the promised amount without a word, which surprised Jake. He did not expect the buyer to give the money back without the authenticity of the goods. However, Randall explained that it was just basic politeness. Curious, Jake asked why Randall was going to use the stone. He replied that his goal was to help those who could not afford to attend the academy, to support people affected by disasters and accidents. According to him, he aims to help everyone who needs it by implementing his plan with the help of the stone's infinite energy. Meanwhile, the director of the academy was amazed that Jake had 3 black stones. He suggested that when he announced that he had 3, he might actually have many more. The director needed the stone itself to create portals with monsters. Now he was asking himself the difficult question of what he should do next. The success was obvious. They now had enough money in their hands to realize any goal they had in mind. Hardy was pleased with Vladika and wanted to talk to him, but Jake was busy. Suddenly the air thickened and something appeared that radiated a powerful aura. Elder Rexor arrived, one of those who did not recognize the bishop. He directly challenged Jake to a duel. This was unexpected for Jake. Rexor smiled, noticing his expression. The elders, as a rule, looked into the very soul of a person, determining whether he was worthy of his position. But Rexor judged only by strength. This behavior caused indignation among the other elders. His arrogance was obvious, but Jake wasn't going to tolerate arguments between them. We decided that he would receive final recognition only after he defeated Rexor. Some, including Valet and Johann, doubted that Vladika would be able to defeat such a formidable opponent, but Jake was serious. The speed of the Rexor was incredible. He appeared behind Jake's back with lightning speed and attacked. However, Jake stopped his knife with one right hand, which shocked Rexor. He clearly underestimated his opponent. The next moment, Jake knocked Rexor to the ground with a powerful throw. The elder was completely overthrown. Realizing his arrogance, he began to apologize. From that moment on, Jake decided that Rexor would serve him as a confidant. As a sign of loyalty, he hugged his leg, swearing his allegiance. After the fight, Jake finally had time to talk to Surti. She proposed to use the amount received from the sale of the Black Stone to organize the relocation of the capital. Everyone was stunned by the proposal to move the capital. The land in the area was depleted, and the lack of social infrastructure made further development extremely costly. However, the move promised fewer expenses and more opportunities. It was proposed to move the capital to the city of Nine, which is strategically located. Surti noted that the surrounding mountain ranges would provide natural protection, preventing outside forces from entering the settlement. In addition, a huge river flowed nearby, which eliminated the risk of drought. She estimated that the initial resettlement budget would be about 10 trillion gold coins. The amount was huge, but in the long run, this step would prevent possible invasions and strengthen security. When the project starts, an 8th elder will join him. Also, the 11th elder for a better result. Jake agreed to start work, and soon the group arrived in the capital city of Nain. With Surti taking over the management of the process, Jake had some free time to devote to his own business. He went to check on his reward for defeating Rexor, but an unexpected discovery awaited him. The reward was only available if he completed an additional task that required a black stone. After fulfilling the conditions, the second award was issued automatically, but he was forced to change his profession. This caused fear and anxiety among the elders. as such changes could significantly affect Jake's status and opportunities. Meanwhile, Olympos confirmed the final formation of all 7 holy thrones. Their first meeting was held in the imperial castle. This played into Jake's hands as it allowed him to identify his future opponents. Agatha returned from the meeting with important news. Among the new figures was a man with level 130 whose strength inspired fear. In addition, the First Holy See held a grudge against Jake and was going to settle the score with him. Agatha also received a special quest related to the Holy Thrones. Until the task is completed, she will not be able to contact Jake directly. However, this turned out to be an advantage, as her presence in the right place made it easier to gather information. Later, Jake told Agatha that he had important things to do. He was going to sign a contract to buy the apartment in her name. Agatha was stunned by this decision. Jake and Agatha set out to find a place to live. They decided to buy an apartment in one of the most expensive residential complexes, and it was a one-time payment which surprised the seller. The property was registered in Agatha's name, and they agreed to meet with the seller on the day of the move. Agatha was happy, realizing that she would now have her own place to live. After that, Jake connected the entire system to Olympus and headed to the cave with the team. Randall was worried that they might be surrounded by a huge number of monsters inside. But Jessica, on the other hand, was confident that she was in no danger when she was with Jake. However, this statement caused Jake to doubt her abilities. There was a whole army of the undead behind her, but this did not convince him of her absolute safety. When they entered the cave, it turned out that there was already a small union inside, led by a leader named Markan. They fought huge ants using fire attacks. After the victory, the leader received a red stone award, but the joy did not last long. His associates noticed the presence of Chaosite and his team. They immediately perceived it as a threat. Absolute evil was in front of them. However, Jake did not show aggression. He wasn't going to attack first unless the little union started a fight. Soon new ants appeared. Coco the bird noticed them and immediately launched an attack. For him, it was not just a battle, he found a tasty prey. Meanwhile, the monster lady Eugene was having an important conversation with President Kang. He vowed to destroy Jake. Eugene was looking forward to this moment. By taking the First Holy See, Jake was able to gain the recognition of the sons of the heavenly ruler, which made him even more dangerous. Eugene was jealous of Agatha, who took the 7th throne. She had failed to do so herself, and now she was not going to watch in silence as someone else took the place that she believed belonged to her. Meanwhile, Coco was enthusiastically eating ants, ignoring the people around him. However, the hunters of the small union warned everyone that reckless hunting would disrupt the ants' hatching cycle, which could cause serious problems. Ignoring this, Coco suddenly used the king's roar. The ants, overcome with fear, ran away, fleeing from an invisible threat. Jake and Jessica immediately expressed their dissatisfaction with Coco. His actions had attracted too much attention. At that moment, Markin, the leader of the other group, approached their team to give them an important warning. He said that further along the path there is a dead end located in the western part of the cave. The dungeon itself was divided into 5 zones. Knowing the area, Markin realized what dangers lurked ahead. Jake, appreciating his knowledge, offered him the role of guide. In exchange, he was willing to share the reward equally. However, Markin refused the offer, agreeing to accept only the loot he could get on his own. The 2 teams moved toward a deadlock. As they advanced, the leader warned them of the need to prepare. When they saw a new wave of ants, Coco the bird immediately launched an attack. He activated a new skill, all-encompassing beak. With incredible strength, he attacked enemies, causing devastating damage. The battle was over and the bird received the red stones for the task. Randall immediately started collecting awards, but this caused Coco's obvious displeasure. The bird obviously didn't like the fact that someone else was taking away the prey it had worked so hard to get. After the monsters were defeated, a passage suddenly opened. The small union, afraid of possible new dangers, decided not to tempt fate and hurried to leave the dungeon. However, when they left, an unknown man came out to meet them. Meanwhile, Jake, noticing that Jessica looked exhausted, gently picked her up. His concern for her was growing. Soon he gave the command to prepare for the use of the technique of soul slavery. The evil space skill was activated, allowing the power of evil to be fully revealed. Randall was delighted with the incredible energy that was spreading around him. Jessica also felt this powerful surge. She summoned her undead creatures of colossal size that exude an aura of death. The undead immediately attacked, using acid volcano against the army of ants. Acid streams flooded the battlefield, destroying enemies without a trace. Jake watched with pride, admiring Jessica's skill. At this point, the skill of encouraging evil was activated, recognizing it as an ally of absolute evil. In response, Jessica used the Legion's slavery skill to take full control of her summoned creatures. Jessica ordered the undead to spread fear everywhere, creating an atmosphere of horror and gloom. She wanted to do everything majestically and intimidatingly, but she could not hide her excitement and joy at what was happening. Her emotions prevented her from maintaining an ominous appearance, but the undead continued to follow orders flawlessly. At this time, Randall felt alienated. He was ignored as if he was superfluous in this grand battle. No one paid attention to him, and he involuntarily began to feel empty inside. Moving forward, they discovered a hidden passage leading to an unexplored part of the dungeon. When the group went inside, Jessica suddenly froze, afraid of the unknown. She instinctively reached out to take Jake's hand, but he rejected her gesture. Instead, he offered Randall to take her hand, which finally impressed Jessica. She was embarrassed and immediately refused, deciding to go on her own. Moving deeper, Jake cast a light spell, instantly illuminating the darkness around him. The rays of light penetrated into the farthest corners of the cave, revealing an eerie sight. Suddenly, a huge snake appeared in front of them, a double of Hirkaktu. The creature was exuding oppressive fear. The snake did not even try to block Coco's attacks. Her indifference to the attacks made Coco furious. Jake noticed this and decided to protect his pet, realizing that the enemy is much more dangerous than it seems. Before he had time to react, the snake opened its mouth with a lightning-like movement and swallowed him whole. At that moment, Randall was frozen with fear. However, a moment later, a powerful explosive blow sounded from inside the snake. A flash of magical energy illuminated the space. Easily tearing the creature's mouth open from the inside, Jake got out. Randall looked at him with surprise and fear. The hunt was successfully completed, and they received snake scales as a reward. Jessica sincerely thanked him for his protection. Deep down, she wanted to tell him that she felt warm and calm in his arms, but she realized that he would take her words differently than she wanted. Meanwhile, Randall hastily collected the bounty, extracting valuable scales from the bodies of the killed creatures. After finishing the battle, the group decided to take a short break. Jake took advantage of the opportunity and left the game. When he came out into the real world, he noticed that his sister Agatha was sitting in the room with a crying face. He immediately realized that something serious had happened and decided to find out the reason for her tears. It turned out that she had been humiliated at a meeting of the Holy See. They called her a worthless worm with no roots, emphasizing that she was just lucky to take one of the 7 places, and now she had to silently obey orders. Jake was furious. No one had the right to treat his sister like that. He tried to calm her down, gently stroking her head. He promised to look into it. After that, he joined the game again. Almost immediately, he was warned that an important person was looking for him. It was the leader of the Union. He said that they had a conversation with President Kang. The president expressed extreme dissatisfaction with the fact that the small union sided with the man who was sentenced to life imprisonment. As a result, they were banned from hunting in the dungeons belonging to the Divine Star. The union was forced to collapse, and now the leader was left alone. It was clear from the conversation that Khan considered himself a member of the aristocracy and looked down on others. However, Jake saw this as a situation that could be exploited. He suggested that the union leader join forces and defend the dungeon together. Moreover, he noted that Markin could be used for political purposes. After some deliberation, the leader agreed, realizing the danger but not wanting to miss the opportunity. Meanwhile, in the cave, Coco activated a large-scale bite. Randall started collecting awards. At this point, the system announced that a new passage had been found. However, the Hirkaktu doppelganger appeared on their way again. The leader of the Union was shocked to see such a powerful enemy. Jake immediately attacked and delivered a critical strike, easily dealing with the enemy. The hunt was successfully completed. The leader of the Union was stunned to realize that even if all the Holy Thrones attacked Jake at once, he would still emerge victorious. At the same time, President Kang was summoned for a serious conversation. Director Hong was surprised to learn that his grandson had destroyed the little Union. He noted that such situations require policy adjustments. In the future, Kang should have tried to negotiate first and only then resorted to extreme measures. In parallel, one of Khan's subordinates conducted an investigation. He found out that some people had purchased real estate for amounts exceeding their official income. Agatha was among them. There was an assumption that she bought the house with money she earned thanks to the 7th throne. Although there was no accurate information, the investigation was conducted to identify absolute evil. However, he was struck by his subordinate's suggestion. Instead of destroying the 7th throne, he could hire him. They could have made him a subordinate of the Divine Star, thereby increasing the organization's influence in the international arena. This idea seemed very promising to the president. The team arrived at the southern part of the cave, known as the Impregnable Cliff. The place was gloomy and dangerous, and its depth reached 70 meters. The leader warned Jake to watch his step because the road could suddenly end. In the past, the Divine Star Union tried to explore this region, but their entire squad was destroyed. Jake ordered Coco to prepare for the descent to the foot of the cliff. He thanked Markin for helping him find the right path. Then the whole team began to carefully descend into the gorge. Jessica expressed her desire to fight with Jake. He allowed it, and she was only too happy to do so. The gorge was shrouded in pitch blackness, and visibility was almost zero. To fix this, Jake created a light source. The bright flash proved fatal for Randall, who lost his balance and fell down. He fell right into the mouth of a huge snake. The system instantly announced that Randall's pet was dead. Jessica immediately set about capturing the snake's double. She summoned her undead, which surprised Markin. He couldn't understand how she managed to turn all the monsters living in this place into evil. In addition, her creatures looked much stronger and larger than usual. Until then, he had never heard of a necromancer of such power. Meanwhile, the unique skill of the Cave Queen of Ants was activated. She ordered her soldiers to attack the snake. Soon the hunt was successfully completed. The system provided the team with time to rest, and they decided to meet in a day. Before they parted ways, Jessica hopefully turned to Jake for praise. Upon receiving it, she instantly blushed. Suddenly, Khan appeared in front of the team. He came with an offer for Jake. He did not even listen to him and immediately attacked. Before Khan could realize what had happened, he was killed. The saint fell before he could even defend himself. He vowed fiercely that he would certainly execute Jake for this act. After the massacre of the bastard who harmed his sister, Jake felt relieved. When Agatha learned about this, she did not understand why he killed him so quickly, without letting him feel all the pain and torment. Jake realized what she said and decided that he would do something different next time. Agatha was in the process of completing a quest. When she announced that she would miss one of the meetings because of the move, it caused general disdain among her circle. Jake decided to deal with the situation. He promised that he would record all their dark deeds on video and publish them so that their reputation would be destroyed. After the move, their family felt happy. Their parents were proud of them because harmony finally reigned in their home. Meanwhile, the president's servant came across the post that Jake had posted online. The head was confused. He couldn't understand where Jake's confidence came from. A day later, Jake and his team headed deeper into the cave. It was the northern part, the last location where he easily defeated the doppelganger. The system notified me that all the duplicates had been destroyed and the altar of Hercactus's summoning was activated. Now the bodies of defeated doubles could be used as sacrifices. They brought 4 bodies to the structure for the sacrifices. After the verification, the system started the ritual and the altar of invocation began its work. The thing Jake had been waiting for happened. The hidden boss has finally appeared. Hercac's real body appeared right in front of him. The monster's eyes had the power of petrification, capable of binding the player's bodies. Even Coco was affected by this power, losing the ability to move. However, Jessica, despite the danger, was ready to fight. But Jake ordered her to stay behind, deciding to fight the monster alone. He immediately attacked, using a real technique of 100 lightning strikes. But the snake used its petrification ability and stopped the attack. Jake realized that he was not facing an ordinary boss, but something much more dangerous. Then he decided to use an extremely powerful fist. In response, the snake attacked, releasing injections of venom. However, even this did not stop him. He again used 100 lightning strikes. After a long and intense battle, the hunt was over. As a reward, Jake received 2 unique skills, the spiritual eye and the coming of the god of evil. After the battle, Jessica decided to use her powers and resurrect the snake. Having finished the dungeon, the team headed for the exit. However, Khan was waiting for them at the exit. He tried to propose to Jake again, but he wasn't going to listen to him. Activating the spiritual eye, he saw that Khan was surrounded by many protective spells. Not wanting to waste time talking, Jake immediately attacked. However, Khan managed to withstand the blow. At this point, Jessica's revived evil spirits rushed to attack, surrounding the enemy. They grabbed him by the throat, and Jake took his head off with one powerful punch. Khan's soul was left in confusion, not understanding what exactly Jake was up to. Suddenly, a huge creature appeared in the sky, a dragon. A girl was sitting on its back. It was Eugene. She came downstairs and, looking at Jake, offered him a deal. She could save his life if he agreed to work for her. Jake was amazed. He didn't know who the woman was or how she had so much confidence in him. He wondered if she had a special class. Her offer was absurd. She wanted to accept him as a subordinate and Coco as a pet. Her push and determination made Jake think, but he was not going to waste time on empty talk. Eugene belonged to the Sons of the Heavenly Ruler Guild, one of the unofficial but very influential forces. She was used to the fact that even the directors of large unions were extremely careful with her, but Jake showed no respect. She got angry and thought about attacking, calling her dragon. However, her actions were considered an assault, and Jake ordered Coco to attack. Coco, the true ruler of the sky, immediately attacked his opponent. Eugene was furious. She felt humiliated that Jake was using this sloppy chicken against her dragon. But the result was obvious. Coco won, and Eugene's pet was dead. In a rage, Eugene slapped Jake. Meanwhile, Jessica, who was nearby, was recording everything that was happening on video. She wondered who this woman was and why she thought she could treat Jake like that. Eugene said that after such an incident, it would be difficult for Jake to live peacefully in South Korea. But Jake just laughed. In response, he ordered Coco to peck Eugene. It all ended in a trivial way. Eugene was dead. An object fell out of her body, which Markin immediately handed to Jake. Among the things were many red stones. Jake distributed them. He gave some to Coco to eat, a pair for Jessica, and one more Markanu. He did it not out of nobility, but because it was recorded on video. Nevertheless, Markin was sincerely grateful to Jake. The latter, in turn, took this as a sign that he was ready to support him in the future. Some time passed. Hardy was happy with Jake. He said that the trade in black stones is going well, which will provide a significant supply of money. He also suggested that Jake set up a forward base to move to the continent. Jake accepted the offer with a heartbreak for his money. Meanwhile, Hong discussed the situation with members of the Sons of the Heavenly Ruler. In circumstances where most people supported Jake, he became a serious problem for their organization. If the livestock dares to sit on the throne of the master, then it will have to pay the appropriate price. Last time, Jake had to deal with the transfer of the capital, and now he was creating a forward base, which meant that all the money he earned was going nowhere. He looked at it for a while and realized that the girls were going to have a housewarming party at his house today. Jessica was very worried about her appearance before the meeting. The girls arrived at the place, stunned by the scale of the residential complex. Jessica was suddenly called out by a man standing next to her. He offered her a bite to eat, but she refused, saying she had a boyfriend. The man left her a business card with his number in case she wanted to get in touch. This man turned out to be the head of the Union of the Hellenes. When Jake appeared, Jessica immediately ran to him. At the housewarming party, the girls actively discussed the situation, suspecting that Agatha was trying to set Jessica up with Jake. This caused a serious stir. As a result, Jessica decided not to communicate with them anymore. In turn, Jake didn't want her to talk about him too much. Randall arrived soon after. Thinking back on the plan, since Jake was a chaos man, he assigned all external operations to Markin. From that moment on, their organization began to be fully active. The first steps were to create an advanced base on the continent. The land purchase transaction went off without a hitch, as everything was legally correct. Upon learning of this, the Divine Star Union immediately decided to destroy the new base, writing about it on the Olympus website. However, the reaction of other major unions was more restrained. Perhaps the rumors that Jake has 2 more black stones played a role. In addition to the elders of Sarmak and the Black Flowers, he also had Jessica at his disposal, who has an overwhelming advantage in large-scale battles. So the Yom had nothing to worry about. Jake instructed Randall to declare war on society. Right now, they have to pass a death sentence on the Divine Star and Hellenic unions and attack first. Meanwhile, the man who had earlier invited Jessica to dinner continued to talk about her. She was completely in line with his taste, but because she already had a boyfriend, she rejected him. He didn't understand what she saw in Jake. There was nothing special about him on the outside. However, he was confident that if he acted carefully and gradually got closer to her, he would eventually get his way. At that moment, he received a phone call and was informed that absolute evil had declared war. Jake openly declared the complete destruction of the territory of the Rumen Valley, a key area where the Hellenic Union mainly operated. The man ordered me to tell my people that they should avoid direct conflict with absolute evil as much as possible. Meanwhile, Hong was worried about the fate of his territory. He was intensely aware that they desperately needed Karma's support, but he coldly declared that those sitting on the holy thrones would not take part in the upcoming battle. Hong relied on the power of the Divine Star, sincerely believing that it would certainly pass a harsh and merciless sentence on the Chaosites. However, Khan shrewdly understood Karma's true intentions. He probably hoped for the defeat of the Divine Star and was going to appear on the battlefield at the most critical moment to appear before everyone as a savior. The conflict with absolute evil had long been resolved, and its inexorable development was becoming inevitable. Meanwhile, Agatha followed the latest developments with keen interest. Upon learning the news, she felt a surge of indignation. As soon as the saints heard about what had happened, the fourth holy throne hastily withdrew from participation, like a cowardly beast avoiding a fight. This throne belonged to a mysterious player with the nickname As It Is Said, and he may have possessed a rare class of necromancy. Agatha was most annoyed by the fact that people everywhere kept saying that absolute evil was just a collection of social misfits and the dregs of society. Jake himself confirmed this without a trace of shame. However, Agatha felt more and more strongly that the real garbage was not him at all, but the arrogant holy thrones and haughty big unions that looked down on the rest of us. Holding back her irritation, she suggested sending all those smug scoundrels to the dump, and she and Jake punched each other as a sign of determination. Meanwhile, in the Rutan Valley, preparations for the battle were fully completed. This place had a strategic advantage. Nature itself created it in such a way that players could hunt at the foot of a high cliff, and the top of the valley offered a favorable elevation for attack. However, Jake unexpectedly chose an attack strategy from the bottom. He knew exactly where the minefield was located and warned Randall in advance about the dangerous areas. Those preparing for the defense probably thought that he would launch an air attack, flying in on his trusty Coco. But as always, he preferred to go his own unpredictable way. When Jake spoke into the loudspeaker, his voice sounded even and cool. He had no personal hatred for his enemies, but he did not hesitate to destroy all the staff members of the Divine Star. At the same time, he was well aware that among those present could be mobilized fighters who would be forced to fight against their will. So he suggested that those who did not want to take part in the battle should raise their left hand. He was not going to attack those who did not want to fight. Screams were heard from the top of the mountain. The men watched in amazement as Jake confidently and easily avoided the mines, as if he knew their location in advance, suspecting that he had a special ability to detect hidden traps. As expected, they soon decided to attack him. Several of the enemies were holding magical explosion scrolls, a terrifying weapon that meant they were ready to commit self-destruction to end Jake. As soon as they approached, Randall immediately activated the shield. The next moment there was a powerful explosion. When the smoke cleared, Jake was standing there, completely unharmed. At the same time, Randall was carefully recording what was happening on video, not missing a single detail. This moment was a turning point. The enemies began to hesitate. Their confidence shook, and fear slowly but inexorably engulfed their minds. Before the situation was finally resolved, however, a silhouette appeared in the sky, rapidly approaching. It was Jessica, riding Coco. It was then that Jake did not hesitate to activate the evil space skill. Jessica realized that her fate was sealed. She belonged to a class that supported absolute evil, and therefore thought it was better for her to become a chaosite as well. Jake calmly accepted her decision. It was her first fight, and she had to prove her strength. She called on her soldiers. The warriors of the Divine Star were confused. At this time, giant ants were already devouring the soldiers. The soldiers did not understand what they were facing. They saw a necromancer in front of them, but his powers were unknown to them. Suddenly, Jake appeared from behind the soldiers. He decided to put his skills to use by utilizing the coming of the god of evil. He hoped that his appearance would be as epic as when Jack used her magic. Dense clouds of black smoke began to gather in the air, taking on frightening shapes. Panic set in among the soldiers. They didn't know what to do in the face of the impending darkness. Meanwhile, the undead summoned by Jessica began to disappear one by one. As promised by Jake, those soldiers who raised their left hand remained alive. But one man refused to submit to fear. He realized that he was doomed, but he preferred to fight to the last than to die without doing anything. He rushed at Jake, but before he could strike, absolute evil was ahead of him. Meanwhile, public opinion began to lean in favor of absolute evil. Khan, who realized the growing threat, ordered an increase in troop strength. He developed a plan according to which one powerful spell was to bind absolute evil. 300 magicians were mobilized to implement the plan. They simultaneously activated the spell, and Jake was paralyzed. He could not move. A man approached him. Without hesitation, he struck him. Although Jake had anticipated the possibility of such a scenario, he did not expect to be tied up. Meanwhile, one of the men ordered to take out everything that had been prepared in advance. Among the items was an artifact that blocks automatic recovery. He then asked Jake a question about his possible patrons, but quickly came to the conclusion that a chaosite simply could not have any. Suddenly, Khan appeared and rushed out to handcuff Jake himself. However, the next moment, the unexpected happened. Jake easily freed himself from his shackles and without hesitation struck out. The reason was simple. He simply did not like Khan. Everything went exactly as Surdy had predicted. Behind the scenes, Randall was recording what was happening, shooting video in real time. After being tied up, Jake opened the skill window, assessing the situation. He realized that now was the best time to strengthen the true technique of mind energy that conquers the heavens. This decision turned out to be correct. Jake demanded that everyone continue to keep their left hands raised, and then reminded them once again that his enemy was the Divine Star Union. He didn't want to organize further massacres and simply asked everyone to go home. Meanwhile, the head of the Union, Elam, watched the live broadcast and was stunned. The attack of the absolute evil had driven him mad. A thought began to creep into his mind. Perhaps the Divine Star Union had indeed made a mistake by disturbing someone who should not have been disturbed. At that moment, he thought about Jessica again. Thoughts of her haunted him. He wanted to get her a job and take good care of her. Meanwhile, Jessica was flying to Coco, completely absorbed in thought. Her admiration for Jake only grew stronger. The battle developed according to a pre-prepared scenario, and everything went exactly as planned. However, she had a clear realization that she needed to become stronger to be with him. Jake stood over the cliff, thinking about what had happened. However, he suddenly jumped back. The Rumen Valley began to expand. This meant only one thing. The monsters from the gorge would soon begin to appear. The hidden part of the test was completed. 2 new bosses have appeared in the depths of the dungeon. Double Digger and Black Armadillo. Jake expected this. He knew that absolute evil had a special compatibility with monsters if they were created under certain conditions. He decided to use an intimidating effect. I immediately noticed that the monsters began to tremble with fear. His group, which was following Jake, just laughed, not taking the situation seriously. However, he used his spiritual eye and saw that the monsters had no intention of attacking. This interested him. When he touched one of them, he felt that the monster did not feel aggression but rather confusion. Jake reassured him, making it clear that he was not going to attack. The monster, pleased with this attitude, began to feel sympathy for him. Now Jake's status was properly fixed. Meanwhile, a group of warriors watching the monsters on the video mistakenly decided that they were weak. They rushed to attack, not realizing that they had made a fatal mistake. As a result of the chaotic battle, soldiers began to die one by one, underestimating the threat. At the same time, it was February in Khan's office. His irritation grew until Eugene entered the room. She saw everything that happened and was outraged that the person who occupies the Holy See could not show himself in a worthy manner. Her words hurt Khan, and his hatred boiled over. He vowed that one day he would ruthlessly crush her when the opportunity arose. Meanwhile, Jake continued to ruthlessly beat members of the Divine Star Society. In the midst of the battle, he received a whispered message from Chan. He admired his actions and decided to contact him to offer help. Chan explained that all media outlets are currently under the control of large unions. However, he was a journalist and wanted to shed light on the truth. He asked for permission to help Jake by offering to create a video that would show him in the right light. Jake thought it was a good idea. Together, they edited a video emphasizing that absolute evil had defeated the monster bosses. It also took the initiative in distributing awards among players. This material became a sensation and was shown in the conference hall of the Divine Star Union. After watching the video, they could not remain indifferent. A decision was soon made. Hun declared war on absolute evil. The army of the Great Union emerged on the territory of absolute evil. Everything went exactly according to Jake's plan, and he was happy to accept the challenge. Although there were elders nearby, it was too risky to use them in battle, so he decided to deal with the enemy on his own. Jake knew that the Union had not prepared for this clash at all, and he intended to show them the difference in power. Agatha asked what he would do if something went wrong. However, Jake was confident in his abilities and reminded us that he had another hidden military camp. Its location remained unknown as it was registered as a personal item, and if even the Empire could not find it, users would not find it. Agatha expressed concern about the fight with Khan, but Jake was much stronger than him. He was counting on one seemingly useless skill that could, however, play a decisive role. Meanwhile, the Holy Thrones were running around like crazy, and Agatha wanted Jake to give them a good old kicking. She was annoyed that Eugene, who was not involved in the affairs of the Holy See, still participated in the quests with everyone else. Jake thanked her for the information. Hong was convinced that there was no point in hurrying, because their position remained extremely favorable. They had trained high-ranking mages specializing in fire in advance, and had also stocked up on expensive Sea of Flame scrolls. Their plan was to simply wait until the besieged fell from hunger and exhaustion. At this time, the Imperial Court of the Empire was discussing the situation. Imperial intelligence concluded that they were facing forces with legitimate rights. For them, it was not a case worth paying serious attention to, but something happened that Hong did not expect. Absolute evil appeared in the trade city of Darren, which is part of the Divine Star. The town manager, a merchant named Tu Mian, did not understand why Jake was here. He could not have come to destroy the city alone. Meanwhile, Kang, a member of the Grand Union of the Divine Star, which ranks 7th in the official rankings, joined the action. He activated the eye skill and was surprised to see that Jake had indeed come all alone. Wasting no time, Kang used the Divine Bow of the Fire attribute and shot an arrow at Jake. However, he caught it with his hand. The heat burned his palm, but he did not pull his hand away. Khan was amazed. Jake, in turn, decided to take things seriously and used a devastating blow. Jake recalled the words of his mentor, who once told him that he was a child destined to conquer the world. It was for this purpose that he taught him, passing on his skills. At that time, Jake still had dreams. He just wanted to live an ordinary life, not thinking about greatness or destiny. But now everything has changed. According to the mentor, even with 2 skills, you can achieve incredible results. Now he has activated a devastating blow. A thick black fog rose around them, covering the battlefield. At that moment, Khan rushed at him from the sky, raining down explosive fire. But Jake reached out and used destruction. The enemy troops were terrified. The situation was getting out of control, and they knew that this should not be published on information portals. However, Jake had Chan's video recording stone. He filmed everything, leaving no detail out. It was live, allowing the whole world to see what was really happening. Cam, watching the scene, was impressed by Jake's skills. He quickly ordered a retreat. The fortress wall was collapsing, and it was very dangerous to stay here. Taking advantage of this moment, Jake entered the fortress. The enemy army received orders to stop him at any cost. Meanwhile, Elan's allied troops arrived. Hong could not have imagined that the powers of absolute evil could reach so far. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, he ordered to break through the gate and find the feudal crystal. But something was wrong. A strange, almost ominous silence reigned inside the fortress. No one defended the feudal crystal. It all looked too suspicious. Serdi followed the developments. Everything went exactly according to her plan. At the same time, Khan was going into a rage. He realized that they were facing something bigger than they had expected. They had another feudal lord. This realization hit him like a slap from absolute evil. Jake realized from the beginning that he was taking a huge risk, but thanks to the reduction in energy consumption, he had a chance to take advantage of the situation. The energy thickened around him, concentrating on a single point. Cam, using his clairvoyance skill, noticed that all the crystals were now in Jake's hands. This meant that he was in control of the situation. One basic hit, and the crystal is destroyed. Now all that was left was to protect the crystals created within 15 minutes to officially become Lord Darren. However, the task was not easy. Jake faced mages, strong opponents ready to attack him. Their attacks were fast and deadly, but he was not going to retreat. Cam also used his skills to try to influence the course of the battle. Meanwhile, millions of viewers watched the event live, marveling at Jake's power. Many began to consider him invincible. On one of Chan's servers, the number of viewers exceeded 1 million. He was happy with what was happening, but a sudden message changed his mood. Ellen started her broadcast. It was a press conference. Ben was in the center of attention, giving a speech. He stated that the power in Durhan was actually in the hands of absolute evil. This statement caused a flurry of emotions among the audience, and suddenly Jake was considered a murderer. Chana was not going to just sit back and watch what was happening. He used his bot detection skill and instantly blocked them, clearing the viewer stream of artificially generated comments. Realizing that the moment was right, he decided to use the video that Jake had previously sent him. There was footage on the recording. Ben was selling exclusive rights to teleport and hunt, receiving kickbacks for it. Soon the video became available to the general public. Ben was stunned. His actions became known to the whole world. Jake made an official statement outlining his position on the administration of Darren. He promised to conduct business in a transparent and responsible manner. Ben and his allies realized that their only option was to attack until Jake had definitive proof. The situation was heating up, and the battle for power in Durkan was approaching its peak. In an attempt to bring Durkan back, Divine Star and Elan joined forces again, forming a powerful alliance. At the same time, an informal meeting of the leaders of the largest unions took place in South Korea. The main topic of discussion was absolute evil. No one knew whether it would be able to demonstrate the same power again as during the feudal war. Some feared that if he lost, he would lose his power and their unions would be subject to harassment. However, there was another opinion. If the absolute evil continues to grow stronger, it can turn into a force against which no one can resist. Meanwhile, Randall collected all the items of the players who died in Durkan. For this, Jake thanked him by giving him a valuable necklace. Shortly after the publication of the special contract, the number of registered users exceeded 10,000. All that was left for Jake to do was to demonstrate his power during the Battle of Durkan. If he proves to be unbeatable in both offense and defense, everyone will want to serve him. Ben found himself in an extremely difficult situation. He was charged with large-scale bribery, which put his career in jeopardy. Meanwhile, something sinister appeared in the hunting grounds of the Divine Star. The undead began to rise from the shadows, and soon the creatures of the highest class appeared among them. Jessica was going to be attacked, but she didn't lose her cool. She immediately summoned her dead soldiers ready for battle. At that time, Surti and Jake were standing at the eastern gate of Durkan. They expected a huge army to arrive on the battlefield, but even the boldest predictions could not compare with reality. There were many enemies. Seeing this mass, Surti suggested that the elders gather, but Jake decided to deal with the situation himself. He activated the Mercury Strike skill. His body was filled with wonderful demonic energy, the power of which was impossible to ignore. The enemy army was confused, not realizing what was happening. Soon, the first Holy See of the Divine Star Kong intervened. He came to find out what was going on and was confident that he could beat Jake. Kang immediately activated the Swords of Flame and prepared defensive magic for all possible types of battles. His confidence in his abilities was unshakable, and he was sure that he would defeat the enemy. However, before he even realized it, he found himself pierced by the rays of the attacks of absolute evil. Jake watched with a slight smile. Something strange was happening in the battle. No one could understand how absolute evil regenerates its energy so quickly. His unique Mercury skill gave him full awareness of the enemy's every move, allowing him to clearly see attacks, their direction and source. Moreover, it could deflect blows and absorb damage with virtually no expenditure of its own resources. In such circumstances, Jake was virtually invincible. Hun realized that in this situation there was no point in sending his rangers to attack. Any attempt would have resulted in instant death, so he ordered us to retreat and wait for a more suitable moment. Jake immediately realized their intention. They were hoping that his Mercury skill would eventually wear off. However, he was not going to sit and wait. Instead, he decided to strike first. At this time, in the airspace above Durkan, Jessica was riding on Coco's back. Her goal was clear, and she promised her companion a blue stone if he sped up. However, as she flew over the battlefield, she spotted Jake below, even though he was supposed to be on the fortress wall. She was surprised by this. Meanwhile, Jake activated Asher's devastating Heavenly Fist skill. In response to his actions, the sky darkened as if foreshadowing a catastrophe. This skill was so powerful that it affected the environment, creating strong interference in all video recording devices around Daron. Chan, who was watching, was amazed. He considered whether he should join the battle directly to continue filming, but doubted that he would be able to get out alive. The force of Jake's punch was so great that it knocked everyone down. It was a higher-level skill available only to those who had reached level 99. After its activation, all combat abilities merged into a single destructive effect, leading to the instant death of enemies. His mentor would definitely be proud of him. Jake didn't want to drag out the fight and decided to end it as quickly as possible, so he activated the skill of complete destruction. The effect was catastrophic. Panic broke out in the ranks of the Great Union. More than 100,000 people were killed in a single strike. The only way out was to detain Jake at any cost. The only one who could do this was the director of Blueheart. She was urged to join the fight and buy some time. She realized that her chances were negligible. However, she also knew that the Divine Union would repay her for this sacrifice in the future. Despite her fear, if the order was given, she had to obey. Jake decided to test Blueheart's abilities, but his thoughts were interrupted by an urgent message. Jessica reported that they suddenly began to hold a conscription ceremony at the West Gate. At the same time, the Intelligence Corps discussed the situation, highlighting 3 key points. First, absolute evil turned out to be much stronger than expected. Secondly, the wanted criminal being pursued looked like Jake. One of the scouts said that Colt surrendered 8 hours ago. Third, Kang of the Big Star Union rented a Ramada, a powerful third-class weapon. Although they could only use half of its original power, it was enough to destroy Durkan's castle. Meanwhile, Director Elin prepared for battle. Jake, having activated the skill Heaven-Conquering Steps, simply ran away, leaving her in confusion. Jessica realized that she could not stand aside. She told Coco to be on the lookout. She called her soldiers to death, demonstrating her strength and hoping to earn praise. During the ritual, a creature appeared, the undead Hirkaktu. The people around them were petrified, amazed at the sight. Jessica successfully met the challenge. Meanwhile, Coco tried to save her from a quick fall. He realized that if Jessica died, he himself would face inevitable punishment from Jake. However, at the last moment, Jake managed to catch her and praised her, calling her a smart girl. Jessica was touched by his words. After assessing the situation, Jake realized that he couldn't destroy the Ramada alone. He had to get rid of all the mages in the area first. He activated the 1,000 Lightning Strike skill and rushed into battle. At that moment, I received a message from Chan. He said he was on the eastern fortress wall. He warned me that Director Elin was giving an urgent interview in front of the eastern gate. She contemptuously called him a cowardly killer, claiming that he preferred to run away as soon as he felt threatened. But at the moment she was sure he had escaped, he suddenly appeared in front of her, rapidly attacking. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, she ordered everyone to retreat immediately. Their plan related to Ramada failed, which meant one thing. The president of the Grand Alliance was forced to move to the last stage of the strategy. Now her task was to buy some time at any cost. However, things didn't work out the way she expected. Jake eliminated the fifth-ranked runner-up with one shot. It was so easy and quick that it almost seemed insignificant. Then he activated the skill of the spiritual eye, which allows him to see hidden energy flows. In the rear, he noticed a tremendous concentration of magical power. This meant that the enemies were preparing something big. He did not hesitate and started hunting for the runners. He warned them that if they did not interfere with him, no one would die. However, Khan, realizing that the situation was getting out of control, ordered an immediate stop with the use of tanks. Meanwhile, the third strongest ranger, the great mage Lamian, prepared to attack. She commanded 300 magicians and was going to use a powerful shackling spell. All she had to do was put the magic shackles on him at the right moment. Before that, she used the level calculation skill to estimate the enemy's strength. Her calculations showed that Jake's level was only 70th. This strengthened her confidence. She activated the magic circle, trapping him. She intended him to be completely immobilized, but something went wrong. In an instant, Jake was right in front of her. The spell hadn't worked. Lamian froze in confusion. All her calculations were wrong. She didn't take into account the fact that Jake's characteristics are much higher than those of an ordinary player of his level. Without giving her time to realize, he delivered a knockout blow. Lamian was defeated. The Divine Union tried to intervene, but Jake did not hesitate to use total annihilation. This led to catastrophic consequences. Khan watched with deep devastation. The situation began to go beyond battles. A war for public opinion broke out. He ordered immediate control of all media outlets to prevent the spread of unwanted information. Soon, however, his servant reported disturbing news. A video of the Battle of Absolute Evil appeared on the internet. It was a private YouTube channel that was rapidly gaining popularity. The recording was made from the fortress wall using an ordinary handheld camera. The news made Khan furious. He immediately ordered to find out the author's identity and take action. Meanwhile, Johann gave Jake another disturbing piece of information. The Divine Alliance had begun to track Chan, which meant that assassins might have intervened. The situation was becoming increasingly dangerous. Recognizing the possible consequences, Jake decided not to take any chances and turned to President Randall for support. Randall has long sought to conclude a deal with South Korea, but all his attempts have invariably failed. The major alliances deliberately prevented any contracts, prohibiting any cooperation. South Korea, a country with no distinct social classes, resisted a system in which large unions self-proclaimed themselves nobles and ruled the people. Randall hated such power and therefore saw Jake as an ally. He decided to support him without any conditions. This surprised Jake, but he had no reason to refuse. The destruction of major alliances coincided with Randall's goals. This news caused a storm of discussion on the internet, turning everything upside down. At the time, Surti was busy processing documents. It was decided to make gradual information releases to study people's reactions, slowly revealing the truth to them. When Agatha read the news, she couldn't believe her eyes, wondering if she was even awake. Jessica was also in confusion, not understanding what was happening to her. Soon after, 3 serious crimes of the Divine Star organization were made public. First, pension payments to Empire players were intercepted through a separate fund. Secondly, during quests, players were deliberately put in situations where their characters could be deleted and then their funds misappropriated. Third, gold coins stolen from pension and social funds were transferred to Eugene's accounts. Agatha and Jessica were stunned. Jessica didn't like Eugene. Agatha now wanted to do something to help. Meanwhile, Jake continued his offensive on the port city of Marine, inflicting devastating blows on it. He waged a feudal war against the Divine Star, seizing 1 or 2 feudal lords a day. Each time, Serdi analyzed the documents she received, extracting the necessary information from them. Jake was impressed with her work ethic. It seemed that Serdi was a real workaholic. At the same time, Hong and Kang discussed the situation. They faced a serious problem. The absolute evil they saw Jake as had drawn up a massive plan. Using its power, it not only conquered new territories, but also obtained more and more data. Now Randall has joined him. Hong did not know what measures to take. In desperation, he decided to pull out the knife, although he realized that this would only be a temporary measure. The next day, news of what was happening reached the members of Divine Star. Part of their territory was captured, and black monsters of high complexity began to appear wherever the absolute evil trod. Meanwhile, Agatha burst into Jake's room. She said that she had reached level 70 and learned a new skill, purification. Agatha arrived in the desert of darkness where a frightening silence reigned. Since the black monsters appeared, this place has become deserted, and fear has settled in people's hearts. She decided to change the situation by using the Purify skill. The black cow, which was once a creepy creature, suddenly turned into an ordinary animal. People who witnessed this could not believe their eyes. Hong watched what was happening and could not understand why the Seventh Throne was intervening unnecessarily, ruining their plans. Khan, analyzing the situation, suggested that Agatha had gained some strength and was now overwhelmed. He suggested trying to recruit her and take control, but this idea was rejected. The status of the new celebrities depended on their background, and thus such interference could have unpredictable consequences. Meanwhile, Agatha proudly boasted to Jake that she had managed to clear 2 hunting grounds. He complimented her on her efforts, and she was pleased. Jessica was also glowing with happiness, which did not go unnoticed. Jake took an interest in her good mood. Jessica explained that public opinion on the internet about absolute evil has been improving recently. This was the result of a carefully thought-out plan by Surdy, which began to bear fruit. After a successful battle during the siege of the fortress, the number of players increased significantly, but now there was a new task to expand the territory. The problem was that Jake could not manage all the seized lands on his own. The solution to the problem lay in finding reliable military personnel capable of taking on some of the responsibility. Suddenly, Markin burst into the room. He brought the accounting book of the Welfare Fund, which contained information about the mysterious person occupying the Holy See. The identity of this person remained unknown. However, it was said that at the time of the Foundation's creation, it was funded by influential organizations such as Divine Star and Elin. Markin felt that he had stumbled upon an important thread that could shed light on the hidden mechanisms of power. Jake thought about it. At first, he assumed that the fund had been created to steal Divine Star's pension money, but it soon became apparent that it had a much broader impact. The fund was financed by the Great Union and played an important role in the structure of power, directly influencing its mechanisms. Agatha came closer and asked what Jake was doing. In response, he asked how her affairs as the Holy See were going. Her news was truly shocking. Eugene was a disciple of the Fourth Throne. Jake began to mentally put the pieces of this complex puzzle together, realizing that the situation was becoming even more confusing and dangerous. Characters in this world could be deleted forever, losing everything they had. For some players, this became a tragic reality. Facing special monsters that could erase their existence without warning meant a complete reset. They lost all their equipment and items and started over from the first level. Many players sacrificed themselves to find out the nature of these monsters and their abilities. However, after the character was deleted, such people had no way to re-enter the academy or gain independence. The only refuge for them was the Union of Absolute Evil. Here, they could register as local residents and receive support until they achieved economic independence. This period was limited to 10 years. When information about this union spread online, many users were skeptical. However, Jake confidently stated that this level of support could only be provided by taxes collected from Durkan. At the moment, he was able to maintain this system on his own. His statement provoked a violent reaction. Many people rushed to Durkan, and their number quickly grew to 1 million. Now Jake had to manage many feudal lords at the same time. However, the inhabitants present became the basis for a future army capable of defending the territory. The problem of the lack of troops, which had long troubled him, was finally resolved. In addition, a mechanism for stable management of the 10 fiefdoms was created, which allowed Jake to find temporary respite. Using this moment, he decided to visit Nan. It has grown and changed a lot lately. At the same time, a new quest was activated, the Great Vladika. The essence of the quest was for Jake to become the owner of 300 fiefdoms with a population of 3 million in 60 days. It was an incredibly difficult task. By comparison, the Divine Star had been achieving this result for 150 years, and he was asked to achieve it in a short time. If he failed, would he be able to retain his absolute evil class? Suddenly, he remembered Jessica. This surprised him, but when he looked at the situation as a whole, he realized its usefulness. She turned out to be a valuable ally. Now he had no time to think. From that day on, he had to act even faster to accomplish his task. Meanwhile, President Zhang of the Third Grand Alliance returned from a year-long vacation. What he saw surprised him. No one had ever had close contact with absolute evil before. The allies hesitated, but Zhang made a decision. They had to actively support Jake and work with him. It was an extremely risky step. The absolute evil was gaining strength, continued to bear a huge responsibility on its shoulders, implementing its plan alone. In Chan's eyes, he was not a villain, but a hero. If the Alliance follows him and supports him, they will have a chance to block the influence of the new nobility and create a better Republic of Korea. He decided to take full responsibility and become the captain of this movement. Now the older generation had to prepare to meet the new era. Jake started working with the Grand Alliance of New Zealand, the only major organization whose leader came from humble beginnings. Despite this, he could not fully trust him. The Union leader introduced Jake to his granddaughter, a girl named Ju, a warp master. She promised to actively support absolute evil, which surprised Jake. As a player of a hidden class, she did not participate in battles directly, but used her warp abilities. Jake did not expect such a valuable ally to be in the ranks of the Grand Alliance, but thanks to her, his plans became easier to realize. When the grandfather and granddaughter learned the purpose of his quest, they were shocked. However, once Jake had their support, it was time to take decisive action. The first target of the attack was the Taurus Fortress, which is under the control of the Divine Star. Its walls were defended by 5th-ranked magic weapons, dragoons using water magic. Jake planned to strike here, going on an expedition with Ju. Jessica watched what was happening, not knowing what to do. Ju was beautiful, competent, and mature, and Jessica was afraid that she would take her place. However, Jake, noticing her anxiety, calmed her down with a light touch to her head. Then they hit the road. Meanwhile, Lamian, preparing for the defense of the fortress, ordered all the soldiers to supply the magic weapons with mana. Defensive dragoons of the 5th rank were activated. Soon after, the player Absolute Evil appeared. It would have taken him too long to get here on his own, but working with Ju has greatly accelerated the process. Jake assumed that the territory of the fortress would be dotted with magic mines, but using his spiritual eye, he found nothing of the sort. Instead, his eyesight caught only the mana flows that intertwined in the defense structures. When Lamian saw Jake, she arrogantly declared that she would put him in chains and make him her slave forever. On her order, the fortress's defenses opened fire, directing powerful attacks at Jake. However, their attacks were instantly stopped by the dark forces. Lamian was shocked. At this point, Herr Cactus's pupils activated, freezing mana flows and blocking further attacks on the fortress. The Eye of Herr Cactus was one of the 3 rewards Jake received after defeating this powerful creature. The mucus and tears of Herr Cactus had the effect of temporarily raising the level. The eye made it possible to directly use the fossilization ability. This skill allowed you to freeze the flow of mana, blocking not only living beings but also material objects. Lamian didn't understand how it happened, but the magical flows around her instantly stopped. The system notified Jake that the remaining time of the ability was 50 seconds. He decided to act. The fortress had only one entrance, which meant that only one door had to be destroyed. This simplified the task. There was no need to disperse forces over the entire territory. Jake activated the heaven-conquering steps and concentrated a devastating blow. Chan, who was watching, thought it wouldn't be easy to break through the entrance, but Jake managed it much faster than expected. Once inside, he immediately started looking for the feudal crystals. There were no people in the fortress, but it felt like they were preparing something. Soon, a group of soldiers led by Lamian appeared in front of him. She was waiting for him. Jake deliberately pretended not to know who she was, and it made her angry. Lamian did not tolerate insults and took his behavior as a challenge. Jake, however, was in no hurry to join the battle. He warned her that the battle was being filmed from above, but Lamian didn't pay attention. She ordered the magicians to prepare. Then she activated Limited Blood Explosion, a powerful technique that absorbs the user's mana and can completely remove the target. Jake felt the devastating effects of energy on his body. Lamian was sure that this fight would end in her victory. But he collected the scattered mana and cancelled her attack. Then, wrapping himself in the cloud of mercury, he activated the 1,000 lightning strikes. This came as a complete surprise to Lamian. She didn't have a chance. Jake crushed her. Turning to her subordinates, he offered them to leave without a fight, promising to save their lives. The system announced the end of the quest. The fortress was captured. Jake arrived at Taurus Field knowing that capturing the fortress was the key to discovering the hidden reward. He was ready to fulfill this task as there were significant benefits at stake. He was soon joined by Ju and Randall. Ju did not doubt his strength, but the speed with which he managed to capture the fortress still came as a surprise to her. But now she was sure that she had to trust him unconditionally and give him her full support. Randall noticed her thoughtfulness and seemed to guess what she was thinking. He assumed her thoughts were on Jake, but Ju immediately began to deny it. After finishing the conversation, Randall took his leave, citing many things to do. However, he soon returned unexpectedly and reminded her that he was the #1 pet. Meanwhile, a rare blue deer came into view. This monster was found only in the Kagonis Mountains, and its fur was a valuable resource. It was used to make warm clothes. When melted, it became an insulating material of the highest quality. Agatha was thrilled that Jake had discovered the blue deer's habitat. However, he warned her that it was too early to reveal her true identity in the real world, as he was not yet ready to face the great powers. Jake thought about his next move. At that time, a group of people was moving along the road to the Taurus fortress. Their journey seemed calm until one of them was suddenly attacked. The target was eliminated quickly and without noise. Serdi, in turn, hired a mage who was responsible for using the dragoon. Meanwhile, numerous players began to gather in the territories already occupied by Jake. They sought to register in the lands of absolute evil, seeing great prospects in this. This provided an excellent opportunity to start implementing further plans. All of Jake's preparations were complete. Now he was ready for the next step. After the fall of the Taurus fortress, Jake left no survivors inside. This event led to the opening of a new location, but an astronomical sum of 1 trillion was needed to expand the territory. To prepare the necessary funds, he arranged a meeting with Randall. Randall did not wait long and came over as soon as he received the message. It turned out that he had recently been enjoying a luxurious and leisurely life, having bought a small estate on one of the continents. Jake offered him a deal, the sale of black stone, which could bring a huge profit. This offer turned out to be very appropriate. Randall needed a black stone to develop his business on the African continent. He bought it from Jake for 55 trillion without hesitation. He added that if necessary, he could contact him for cash at any time. Having prepared the required amount, Jake invested all 55 trillion in the expansion of the territory, painfully parting with such a huge sum. As soon as the transaction was completed, the conditions for activating the hidden part of the territory were met. 3 magical weapons of the dragoons were transferred to the fortress, and then the last reward was given out. At that moment, the hidden dungeon of Taurus was activated. Meanwhile, after the appearance of the blue deer, a new monster appeared on the Taurus field, the blue otter. The people there welcomed absolute evil, and his popularity among the locals continued to grow. However, Jew, being in the spotlight, felt uncomfortable. Soon after, group relocation was activated. Once in the new location, Jake turned to Randall to clarify whether they had actually arrived at the point indicated on the map. To their surprise, there were already several people there. One of them was the president of the Union, Elon. His behavior immediately aroused suspicion. He looked like he was trying to deceive Jake. Jessica, sensing something was wrong, immediately summoned her evil spirits. She attacked him with an acid volcano. At the same time, Khan was watching the news. The woman sitting next to him said that there is nothing easier in this world than to charm a man. She argued that a handsome man wants a more attractive woman, and feeling superior was looking forward to having fun. However, Khan would not have resorted to such tricks. But despite the fact that the Divine Star was sinking deeper into crisis, he had to. Nothing could cause a bigger scandal than dirty intrigues and rumors related to relationships between the opposite sexes. Meanwhile, Jake and his team arrived at the Taurus dungeon. The first stage of the test began. They had to choose the right door. Choosing a door made Jake a little nervous because his success depended on luck, which he had practically none. Jessica noticed his concern and decided to help by telling him that her luck had reached 48 points. Jake was surprised, not understanding how she was able to develop it so much, but decided to entrust her with the choice of doors. Jessica was aware of the responsibility she was taking on and focused. Her choice turned out to be the right one. The doors opened and the team watched with delight. Meanwhile, Hong was reading the news and was surprised to learn that Prince Randall had arrived in the country. His servant reported that representatives of various unions spoke in favor of establishing surveillance of the absolute evil's entourage. However, Hong decided that it would be more appropriate to send an official request for security. At that moment, he received a message from Karma. He ordered his subordinates to contact the Blue House, informing them that Prince Randall would be provided with security unofficially. This decision was not the simple will of the Divine Star, but came from the sons of the Heavenly Ruler. Randall learned that the Blue House had requested official security for him. He felt that Koreans live without long-term prospects, but only one day at a time. His butler noted that the higher powers create an environment in which one can make money but not hope for the future. Now, after his personal visit, Randolph had a firm belief that this country needed to change, and he realized that absolute evil would become the core of these changes. Meanwhile, Jake's team continued to complete the second stage of the Taurus dungeon. Without accurate information about the area, they decided to go ahead and look around. Jake ordered everyone to climb on Coco to cover the distance faster. Suddenly, he felt something unknown approaching. When he activated the spiritual eye skill, he saw something that struck him to the core. He immediately told Jessica to prepare Hirkak's call and wait for his signal. There was no time to waste at that moment. The approaching figures soon became visible. It was the cavalry. It was the first time Jake had ever encountered such powerful energy. 300 Taurus cavalrymen stood in front of him and greeted him as a bishop. He was amazed to have cavalry at his disposal, but soon realized that this was only the beginning. The head of the cavalry said that Balrog, an ancient monster that was mentioned only in the archives of the Imperial Library, would soon appear. So far, no player has met him in person. Randall was suddenly attacked. The sky darkened, the sun turned black. Then the ancient demon Balrog appeared out of the darkness, bared his fangs. The Urfi's empire trembled every time he appeared. More than 200 years have passed since his last appearance, and no one expected the Balrog to reappear, bringing chaos and destruction. The news of his return shocked everyone, especially when he appeared right in front of the eyes of eyewitnesses. Jake watched the monster, but even with the help of his spiritual eye, he could not immediately realize the nature of its attacks. Balrog's movements were too fast, powerful, and unpredictable. The cavalry immediately warned Jake he must leave, otherwise the monster will soon discover the location of their feudal lord. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, they did not hesitate and hurried to the castle. Balrog kept pace, ruthlessly tracking them down like an animal on the hunt. At this time, the cavalry used special buildings to create powerful destructive waves, but this could not slow down the pursuer. There were few options left. Jake realized that the only possible solution would be a deep defense inside the castle. He ordered me to run as fast as I could, leaving the rest to him. Using the jump skill, Jake and Ju instantly covered the distance to the castle. At that moment, he felt powerful streams of mana coming from the monster. In response, he activated the Mercury Strike, a sphere capable of holding the enemy. Balrog immediately reacted by releasing his black breath. Jake countered this with the intimidation skill. This suppressed the monster's fighting spirit, causing it to falter for a moment. However, Balrog was not going to back down. He began launching rapid attacks, and Mercury Strike took 37 hits in a row. Jake, using the spiritual eye, now clearly saw every movement of the monster. Balrog was furious, but Jake didn't stop there. He unleashed the 100,000 lightning blows, an attack that can crush even the strongest enemies. However, despite the pressure, the monster boss suddenly turned around and fled the battlefield. At this time, Jake's squad and the cavalry safely reached the castle, leaving behind traces of destruction but remaining safe. Roan, once a mighty warrior, was now an undead man under Jessica's control. His body didn't belong to him, and his mind was subdued by a new power. Meanwhile, Sun, a famous celebrity and popular star, arrived in the city. Khan promised her a tidy sum of money for exposing the identity of absolute evil. She was looking forward to it with undisguised impatience. Roan, realizing his new nature, suddenly asked Sun to kill him. He admired her beauty and even offered to date her. But there was a monster in front of her. At this time, Jake and Jessica were discussing the disturbing news that the dungeon boss had escaped. The magical energy emanating from it clearly exceeded the boundaries of the dungeon, which meant that it had been cleansed. Jake realized that now there was nothing stopping them from moving forward. The head of the Tau cavalry swore an oath of absolute loyalty to absolute evil. At the same time, his rank, as well as that of the entire cavalry, was raised by 1 level. Jake could not even believe that he now had 300 immortal and loyal soldiers at his disposal. Unexpectedly for Jessica, Jake praised her for putting a lot of points into success, which turned out to be very helpful. At this point, the system has issued the final awards. The first reward was a field of destruction added to the cavalry attack line. The second award is the Taurus Elixir, which can hide the user's energy. Jake used it right away. Full House energy has completely disappeared. He reached a point where he could hide and control his energy of absolute evil. Meanwhile, Balrog attacked the main granary, causing panic among the defenders. Hong was shocked by what was happening. With the emergence of absolute evil, everything began to go the other way. He was informed that several players were also removed. It was a subcontract. Hong made a decision. These players would be added to the Divine Star's staff, and he would blame absolute evil for what happened. Then he decided to summon the 7th Holy See. Soon a message was received. The sons of the heavenly ruler would send the 5th Holy See instead. At the same time, intelligence suggested that the monster attacks only weak areas, so the situation did not require immediate intervention. Let the players figure it out for themselves. The head of the Union ordered to concentrate mana on the castle walls in preparation for the attack. The monster was approaching. At that moment, Jake appeared and calmly said that we could leave everything to him. He could not understand why the monster, leaving destruction and death behind, did not touch the territory of the feudal lord. He realized that if he left things as they were, the number of casualties among innocent players would only increase. Fortunately, Ju had an exclusive skill that allowed her to track the target's movement along the mana flow. She tagged Barlog at the moment he was preparing to warp. As long as the monster was on the continent of Sentinia and Lunia, she could determine its exact location. At the moment, Barlog was in the main granary of the Divine Star feudal estate. Jake asked Ju to take him there, but when they arrived, they realized they were too late. The fortress was defeated. Among the ruins were the bodies of dead soldiers. Charity immediately reported that the monster had now devastated a large part of the Divine Star territory, killing 30,000 people. She suggested that the next target of the Barlog would be the Cardi feudal estate, which belongs to the NZ Union. The situation was aggravated by the fact that rumors were spreading. The Divine Star was going to use these events as a pretext for a new war. In addition, it became known that the Fifth Holy See was sent to destroy the Den. Without wasting any time, they decided to go to Cardi immediately. When they arrived, the city was in panic. People ran away in fear when they saw the monster destroying everything in its path. Jessica called for her soldiers to die. The Den suddenly became petrified, frozen in place. Jake asked Ju to move him directly over the monster's head, and she successfully completed the task. Once in the air, he activated the Death Fist skill and struck. The blow was so powerful that Barlog fell down completely overthrown. All this time, a hidden camera was recording what was happening. A short time later, the news of Barlog's murder spread around the world. As a reward for winning, Jake received a bag of black stones, a rare resource. After reading this news, Jiro, who is ranked 4th in the world rankings, decided to travel to South Korea to get the black stone. The scene of the transfer of the bag of black stones to Absolute Evil was broadcast live around the world. Until now, many countries have taken a passive stance on it, but the situation has changed. The black stones were of enormous value, and the best players immediately began to make attempts to establish closer ties with him. Jake realized that he was now rich. He was thanked for saving Cardi, but his mind was already on something else. Even the NZ needed black stones, but could not afford to buy them due to lack of funds. In response, he offered to exchange several feudal lords for one black stone. This offer was made quite seriously. He really liked the land and saw it as a good deal. Meanwhile, representatives of the Holy Thrones appeared. They were hostile and openly threatened the Absolute Evil, stating that they were ready to punish him personally. Khan, surrounded by journalists, was also in the thick of things. However, he could not understand what Agatha was doing here. Some time ago, in the place where the Holy Thrones gathered, it was decided to send Agatha to Prunus. Kang, using his powers, temporarily registered her as a citizen of the feudal lord so that she could participate in the battle with the monster. She didn't like this situation at all, and she had a strong desire to slap Kana for such self-rule. Meanwhile, the fifth throne, known as the Guide of Light and one of the sons of the heavenly ruler Zhong, has announced that she will personally go to the battlefield to provide support. Agatha did not want to take part in this battle because she knew that her older brother could deal with all the enemies in one blow. However, she suddenly had a quest that changed her plans. When Jake found out about it, he didn't expect the Holy Thrones to release a quest to hunt down the Den. This meant only one thing. They decided to attack him. John did not delay and sent Absolute Evil a challenge to a duel. He accepted it without hesitation. Soon after, Zhong activated the crystal, summoning the entire army. In response, Jake released his Taurus cavalry. This caused a shock among the Holy Thrones. They clearly did not expect such strength from their opponent. The battle began. Chan's troops tried to attack, but quickly found themselves under attack by the cavalry. Their attacks were weak and ineffective, and Taurus's soldiers easily broke their ranks. Zhong did not understand how things could have turned out this way. Her soldiers, who were used to victories, were now only being hit, not even having time to counterattack. After the troops were defeated, Taurus's cavalry turned its pressure directly on Chan. She had no chance. Soon her body collapsed to the ground and the system recorded the murder of the Holy See. Jake's level has increased. People were stunned when Absolute Evil suddenly acquired its own cavalry. This event shocked everyone, and no one could have predicted what steps the remaining Holy Thrones would take. Agatha was confused and did not know what to do in this situation. Unexpectedly, the Jiro decided to attack the Holy See. Khan was amazed. Until recently, Jiro had not been able to withstand a single one of his blows, and now he easily blocked his sword. Khan asked why he decided to attack him, since he had a chance to become a Chaosite. Jiro was the only solo player among the world's runners who could claim first place in the number of one-on-one duels. Jake watched the carnage. Seeing that the fight might drag on, he decided to intervene and help Jiro. Together, they managed to overcome the First Holy See. At this time, Agatha was engaged in the evacuation of journalists to prevent information leakage and panic. After the fight, Jake immediately began training. The most influential people in the field of black stones gathered at the Cardi Castle. From that moment on, Surti began to speak on Jake's behalf. she announced that those present would not be able to sell all the black stones as they would like. Important statements were made at the meeting. Randall recently acquired a small Korean company to support absolute evil. The captain of the American Union of Justice said he had many feudal lords. Laurent, the leader of the Chinese Union of the Black Rose and the Black Knight, noted that their union of feudal lords is even greater. Yastrub, the leader of the Union of Icelandic Swordsmen, emphasized that their strength is superior to all others. Jake was pleased with the way things were going. Everything was going well. However, not everyone shared his enthusiasm. Hong could not understand why foreigners came to other countries and behaved like conquerors. Soon he received some disturbing news. Absolute evil had unleashed its power on the Pruna and captured the city. In total, 25 feudal lords fell under his rule. Hong has been trying to find a way to stop them but hasn't seen any realistic way out yet. Meanwhile, Jessica had a serious conversation with Agatha. She confessed to her that she had strong feelings for Jake. Ben did not ignore their conversation. Jessica caught his interest, and he ordered a servant to bring her personal data in spite of everything. Jake completed the takeover of all the feudal lords in the vicinity of Pruna. His influence expanded to unprecedented proportions. The head of the Israeli Union of Magicians, known as the Shaman, offered him a lucrative deal. The Union will create a warp portal and map that allows Jake to travel anywhere at any time in exchange for 1 unit of black stone. Jake agreed, providing himself with unlimited travel opportunities. At the central altar of the Non, he reflected that at first he doubted whether he would be able to complete the 60 days allotted, but in the end he managed it in just 6. Now he controlled 300 feudal lords and 8 million people. The quest Great Vladica was successfully completed. The viability of the Heavenly Devil's refuge field was restored, and there was hope that this place would once again become alive. Jake was asked to change the name of the town, and he called it Hill Stay. Soon after, Serdi came running with good news. Non has increased, and the cost of its maintenance has been reduced to 1/10. She could not hold back her tears of happiness. In addition, she said that white-haired otters and white-haired deer were found within the boundaries of the land. If they are sold at a high price, it will be possible to implement a utopian plan that will ensure the prosperity of the region. Jake has new strength. One of them is Boundless Whisper, which removes all restrictions on the transmission of messages in the form of a whisper. Now he could send messages anywhere in the world. The second ability allowed you to expand the boundaries of the feud. 2 black stones were needed to increase the territory of the Great Nan. He activated the ability by absorbing the necessary resources. The Great Expansion began, which was to last 72 hours. Sometime later, Jake and Agatha were watching the news on TV. They couldn't understand how the world went on, pretending that nothing was happening. Jake was sure that if they continued to move in the same direction, the Divine Star would not last 2 years. Agatha thought about how much he had changed and matured. The man who once shocked the world with his appearance as a chaosite was now destroying a powerful organization step by step. Agatha suggested that we throw a small party in honor of Jessica's birthday. But Jake refused. They had to be extremely careful now. Instead of a holiday, he prepared a gift for her in the form of a neat box with a cute red bow. The girl was deeply touched and immediately threw herself into his arms. For this gift, Jake asked the elders to select the necessary items in advance. As a result, they opted for a special manicure that has functions that depend on the level of the user. This gift cost them an astronomical sum of 22 billion gold coins. Meanwhile, a new Hillstay dungeon has appeared. Jake and Coco set out to explore it, deciding to get a bird's-eye view of the area. However, the system reported that flights were prohibited in this area. Realizing that the only way to move was by land, Jake called for the head of his cavalry and mounted his horse. Coco, having no other choice, tried to keep up, running as fast as he could on his paws. While traveling, the head of the cavalry noticed something on the horizon. Soon it became clear that it was an approaching detachment. The energy of these horsemen was reminiscent of the cavalry of Republique. Looking closer, Jake realized that he was looking at cavalry called by the Fifth Holy See. Without hesitation, he decided to oppose them. After activating the skill Heaven-Conquering Steps, he instantly rushed into the attack. Using the most powerful techniques of thousands of lightning strikes and hundreds of lightning strikes, he created a synergy effect. The last step is the great coming of the God of Evil. The devastating power of the skill allowed him to single-handedly destroy the enemy cavalry. However, an unexpected turn of events took Jake by surprise. The leader of Taurus's cavalry suddenly fell down in front of him and asked for death. He did not realize the infinite power of his master and considered himself unworthy of living, wanting to atone for his stupidity. But Jake had a different opinion. He knew that this was not a sin that could be washed away by death alone. Meanwhile, the fallen army began to rise again. Jake killed them over and over again, but they kept coming back. It became an endless cycle. Coco and Tao shouted their delight in front of the bishop. He was not going to use the infinite whisper, but there were no other options left. Realizing that the situation was getting out of control, all the elders who had the fighting ability were called to the dungeon. The elders immediately responded to the bishop's call, gathering in front of Jake. He introduced the head of the cavalry to the elders. Now they had to act as a unit, counting on each other in future battles. Suddenly, two people ran out of the crowd, an elderly man and a young girl. They enthusiastically shouted the name of Vladika, attracting the attention of everyone present. The girl turned out to be the fifth elder, the Archmage of Verdi. The old man is the ninth elder, the Tracker Panda. Jake allowed Verdi to act at her own discretion. In response, she was enthusiastic and immediately set to work. Using the powerful Swamp of Despair skill, she demonstrated the destructive power of darkness. It was a truly incredible sight. Jake did not expect such power from such a young-looking girl. Meanwhile, the panda reported that he had found his way to the next gate. They followed him and soon reached the right place. The gate opened and the group moved to the lower level of the dungeon. Verdi, sensing changes in the magical environment, informed Vladika that she felt a flow of mana in that direction, which caused her great irritation. Soon they saw pedestals that emitted white magic. This energy flow was familiar to Jake. It resembled the power emanating from Agatha, who sits on the seventh holy throne. Luke volunteered to block the way, but Jake stopped him. He reminded us that he is the bishop and it is he who must lead his followers forward. At this point, he activated the evil space skill. Luke immediately felt the power given to them by their leader. Johann, imbued with the energy of Vladika, rushed into the attack first, glorifying his name. Soon the rest of the elders joined the battle. The white dragons guarding the dungeon entered the fray and a fierce battle ensued. Verdi focused on attacking. She summoned a three-headed dragon. Thus, two opposing forces collided. Light and darkness, the magic of destruction and the magic of protection. The battle was raging and its outcome would decide the fate of absolute evil in the dungeon level. The elders won a complete victory, destroying all the enemies. None of them were harmed, and they were sure that this was made possible by the power granted by their master. They began to praise him, recognizing his absolute superiority. At this point, the system announced the creation of a new skill, Monarch's Greatness. This skill gave everyone who swore allegiance to Jake a general boost. Jake asked the elders if they had really sworn allegiance to him. At the same time, each of them activated the oath of the bishop. Coco was the first to accept it, and Jake recognized him for it, praising him for his determination. He was followed by Verdi, who swore her allegiance. One by one, all the elders confirmed their loyalty by pressing the button signifying the oath. As soon as the oath was taken by everyone, streams of new magical energy began to appear in the air. Suddenly, a magic circle appeared among these streams and began to grow rapidly. It was created using the caster's own body as a conduit and resulted in a mana explosion, a self-destructive attack. Jake reacted instantly and ordered everyone to duck. An explosion of this magnitude was extremely dangerous. At the last moment, he activated his protective skill, creating a dome around everyone that completely absorbed the devastating blow. The elders and his followers again sang the praises of their lord. Soon after, the news began to report unprecedented mass layoffs. The Divine Star Union closed hunting grounds, creating a wave of outrage among hunters and ordinary people. Agatha suggested that in such a situation, Jake would be at a disadvantage. However, he was calm and noticed that their dirty deeds began to come out, and now they are just trying to shift all the responsibility to him. Having understood his intentions, Agatha realized that Jake was going to go full force. Soon he consolidated his power by protecting the crystals and officially taking the feudal estate into his personal possession. After that, he appealed to people who had previously been unable to access the blocked hunting grounds. Now he announced that these lands are open to everyone, and no one will pay a fee for their use. In response, people began to praise the absolute evil. In just one day, 24 feudal lords came under his control. Charity assumed that the enemy was completely baffled by this rapid development. Meanwhile, Jake contacted Jessica and asked her to come to him soon. The manicure Jessica received as a birthday present was not just a decoration. It had built-in functions, including protecting the personal security of high-ranking users. At the moment the system detected the threat, a notification was received about an unknown object that threatened the security of the media. It turned out that a hidden camera was installed in Jessica's apartment. Ben was behind it, and now he realized that he was caught. Later, sitting in a cafe, Jessica and Jake discussed what had happened. She learned about the cost of the gift and decided to return it, considering it too expensive. However, this incident only strengthened Jake's belief that the enemy must be crushed properly. Later, Luke came with a report on the new territories. After Vladika used the skill in the hunting grounds, changes took place. New bosses appeared in these lands, a black-furred deer and a black-fur otter. These monsters appeared at certain intervals, and defeating them was a high probability way to get a black stone. Jack and Verdi conducted research, confirming the information. Jake gave them a systematic hunting guide to ensure a steady flow of black stones. Meanwhile, Charity had completed all the preparations. It was time to show the world the greatness of absolute evil. At the same time, large unions learned about the scandal involving the head of Ellen Ben. Additionally, there was information that the absolute evil is able to provide a constant flow of black stones. This statement shocked the whole world. Israel has stated that it is ready to provide support at any time. Iceland has threatened to declare war on Korea if anyone tries to harm the absolute evil. China, on the other hand, has announced that they are brothers with it forever. However, the real shock was the announcement of the creation of the Union of Absolute Evil. Hun was furious and promised that this would not go unchallenged. Soon after, he received information that Sun had gone to Pruno to meet with Absolute Evil. In addition, it has become known that the Seventh Holy See is the sibling of Absolute Evil. Meanwhile, in Pruni, Jake called Agatha and Jessica. As their personal information became known to the major unions, they were provided with Prince Randall's bodyguards. For safety reasons, he also gave Agatha a manicure with protective features. Suddenly, a servant called out to Jake, telling him to come to the meeting room. A woman of indescribable beauty wants to see him. The dreamer expressed her joy at meeting the absolute evil. Her appearance surprised Jake, especially the fact that the servants allowed an ordinary player to enter the castle. This seemed absurd, and he immediately used his spiritual eye. The skill confirmed that Sun was using the power of magic. She was ready to do anything to earn the trust of absolute evil, and she asked Jake to take care of her. However, he immediately realized that he was facing an enemy and warned that his care would be painful. A simple basic strike was enough to kill her. He then asked the spirit why Sun was using magic, but she replied that she did not understand what he was saying. Meanwhile, the NZ Union's research center was in full swing. Jack reported that he managed to block the mind manipulation skill with his black armor. He wore a prototype of the fierce black armor created on the basis of black stones. Jack praised this masterpiece and noted that the armor can be used in the real world, such as a manicure. In terms of performance, the red armor had the best characteristics, while the blue armor was intended for the general public. The white armor, made of cheap white stone, was supposed to be a support for socially vulnerable groups. At this time, Jake and Jessica were sitting on a bench discussing Africa and Randall. Jake told us that he is engaged in large-scale charitable activities, working with energy companies in Africa. Thanks to the sale of Blackstone, the region will be able to get rid of energy poverty for the next 30 years. Jake then handed Jessica a package of black armor, telling her to always wear it. Jessica was delighted with the gift and promised to follow this instruction. After that, they decided to gradually return to the game. Jessica was in the process of destroying her enemies. The Union of Absolute Evil continued its expansion, quickly capturing the Divine Star feudal lords, whose number had fallen to less than 20. At the same time, Ben was sentenced to 12 years in prison and forced to leave the company. At the same time, the Hellenic Union betrayed the Divine Star by stabbing it in the back and asked Jake to save the system. Jake was ready to consider this option, but only on one condition: if the new aristocrats gathered all their illegally accumulated wealth and used it to help the less fortunate. He also ordered the director to delete her character, but she was unable to do so and soon returned. Her thoughts raced as she realized that she had chosen the wrong side and regretted not joining the absolute evil. At this time, Hun had only one thing to do: drown out the loud news with an even bigger event. Meanwhile, in the mountains of the southern province of Chungcheong, Zhang watched Kang. A few hours ago, during a regular walk, his attention was drawn to a car whose loud alarm stood out among the other noise. Curious, Chan activated his YouTuber instinct habit, deciding to find out what was going on. He was surprised to learn that the driver was the director of the Divine Star Corporation. Kang looked obviously worried and was hurrying somewhere with obvious determination. Smelling a sensation, Chan hailed a taxi and began to pursue. Soon he found out that Kang was heading to the place where he was going to launch the Monster Gate, an artificially created portal capable of releasing a monster into the real world. Suddenly, however, the director disappeared from view, only to reappear a moment later right behind Chan. The next second, he was already on the ground, knocked down by a sharp blow. Khan, recognizing him as the host of the Absolute Evil channel, pulled out a knife and said without hesitation that it was time to teach the rootless plebe a lesson. At the same time, in a school in the southern province of Chungcheong, a pair of classmates got together. One of them thought about the girl's fragile, tiny hands, and he wanted to take her palm in his own. At that moment, however, the peace was shattered. A huge monster appeared right in front of her and grabbed the girl. The Republic of Korea plunged into chaos. In a small town in the southern province, monsters began to appear in the morning. Upon receiving the news of the disaster, citizens rushed to hide in shelters, hoping for quick help. However, the army did not appear for more than 2 hours, and people left without protection fell victim to the monsters one by one. Agatha and Jake, trying to follow the events, were overwhelmed by the news and the growing panic. They could not understand how the monsters had entered their world. At that moment, Jake received a message from Randall, who said he needed to say something urgently. Jake immediately arrived at the meeting place and was stunned by what he saw. Chan was lying in a hospital room connected to a ventilator. Randall explained that it was the work of Khan, the director of Divine Star. Jake couldn't understand why he would go that far. Randall showed him the video that Chan had recorded. The recording showed monsters coming out of the mysterious portal one by one. In the next shot, Kang was, without a shred of doubt, delivering a brutal blow to Chan, who was chasing him. Jake realized that the Monster Gate was a Divine Star invention designed to artificially create and release monsters. He promised that he would not let it go unpunished. However, Randall wondered why the government and military were so slow to respond to the crisis. Everything pointed to the fact that what was happening was someone's carefully planned move. Chan assumed that someone powerful was behind it, playing dirty. Jake has come to the only right decision: to reveal the truth, even if it means challenging those in power. Khan felt a heavy burden of responsibility and deep regret. He understood that acting on behalf of the Divine Star, he had to do everything possible to fulfill his duty to people. Instead of the planned recording of a video about the release of the monsters, he decided to show a video that was supposed to have an effect. A man knelt on the screen, and behind him was the silhouette of a muscular orc. Khan tried to gather as much information as possible about the person on the camera, but the recording was cut off at the moment of impact. All he could say for sure was that the protagonist of this video is absolute evil. This coincided with the fact that he left Olympus at the very time when this recording was made. Meanwhile, on the Icelandic server of the Swordsmen's Union, Jake was greeted with cordiality. The head of the union prepared the items he asked for. However, Jake suspected that after the Divine Star video was published, the Swordsmen's Union might have lost any desire to cooperate with him. If his assumption is confirmed, he will be ready to hand over all the black stones he has to the union. Immediately after the video was released, Jake's family members were relocated to a new home that had the same characteristics as Randall's mansion. From the moment Jake's identity became known to the general public, preparations for the move were led by Surdy, and the choice of a place to live was made with the help of Randall. For safety reasons, the Magicians' Union decided to send Jake's parents on a trip to Switzerland. One day, he would inevitably have to tell them who he really was, but he couldn't reveal the truth now. While his parents were enjoying their vacation, Jake was arrested. Agatha and Jessica were very worried about him, while reporters flocked from all sides, hoping to get sensational details. But as he walked past them, Jake didn't even hide his face. He confidently walked forward and made no comments, except for one phrase: "Watch Absolute Evil TV." At that moment, the channel started a live broadcast with Chan. They showed a video of Chan being stabbed. It was a trap thought out to the smallest detail, and the truth was revealed too quickly for the Divine Star Union to take any action. As a result, Jake was safely released from detention and returned home. Meanwhile, riots broke out in the city. People went to rallies demanding the death of the Divine Star. Tensions mounted, and the situation soon escalated into open aggression. Molotov cocktails were thrown at the building belonging to the Union, and a fire broke out. As a result, Kang was arrested. He ended up in a prison cell with his grandfather. They sat opposite each other, not understanding why they were arrested. However, the problem was that they were caught red-handed. However, as aristocrats, they still had a chance to be released with a special pardon. Now everyone knew that Agatha was Jake's younger sister, and she could have joined him. Aware of the current situation, she suggested that if things continued as they were, the Divine Star would fall. At that moment, Jessica appeared and asked to speak with Jake alone. Agatha left the room without hesitation, leaving them alone. Jake listened to Jessica calmly, letting her say whatever she wanted to say. In gratitude for everything he had done, she handed him a package of cookies. Jake accepted the treat, expressing his willingness to eat it with pleasure. Jessica immediately blushed, but he didn't pay it any mind. Despite his outward calmness, Jake continued to think. He couldn't pinpoint exactly who his enemy was, but it was obvious that someone more powerful was behind the Divine Star. At this time, Panda made an unexpected discovery in the basement of the Lord's castle. He found a hidden door that was hard to notice. It turned out that behind it was a secret space created by a top-level player. Hong reported that they had 100 trillion gold coins left, the hidden power of the divine star stored in the Lord's castle vault. If they had managed to raise this money, they could have gotten out of prison. However, access to the vault was restricted. No one except the descendants of the direct line of the divine star could open it. Meanwhile, Panda managed to unlock the lock. Randall instantly caught the scent of gold. At this point, he changed his profession from a defender to a collector, which made him even more useful in the current situation. They entered the vault and from that moment began raiding the dungeon. The panda, realizing that there were probably traps in this place, decided to go first. In the conversation, there was a mention of a Master Ooper, a person who received the title for exceptional achievements in each field. However, Coco behaved lightly. He suddenly overtook Panda despite his caution. Suddenly, he smelled an incredibly delicious odor and rushed forward. Using the King's Roar skill, Coco discovered a new passage. It leads even deeper into the dungeon. Using the skill of large-scale pecking, Coco was rewarded with valuable stones. However, a voice suddenly rang out, warning them that if they took one more step forward, they would inevitably die. Jake carefully studied the surroundings and concluded that the secret corridor and the magic circle were the next gates they would have to pass through. Realizing the possible threat, he ordered Randall to activate his defense skill. He stepped forward regardless of the consequences. At the same time, Hong escaped from prison under the pretext that he had begun to experience a worsening of his chronic illness. Finding himself in a difficult situation, he decided to connect to Olympus, hoping to help. Randall activated the protective barrier. Jake used the evil god's defense ability, which allows him to resist external energy influences. One could see with the naked eye that the Vladika's mana far exceeded the flow of magical energy that filled the tunnel. Suddenly, the flames blocking the way went out. Seeing this, the group decided to move forward cautiously, heading for the next door. Suddenly, the vault, which seemed to be securely sealed, opened. A huge mountain of gold coins appeared in front of them. Coco and Randall could not resist the temptation. The former greedily filled his belly, enjoying the riches while the latter hastily collected coins using automatic fundraising skills. Jake had mixed feelings. On the one hand, he was pleased that they had gained access to the vault without any problems. But on the other hand, such ease seemed suspicious. Suddenly, one of his recent acquisitions, a divine-ranked ring bought in Iceland, began to glow. It resonated with something, awakening an ancient force. A massive black box appeared in front of them. The atmosphere changed instantly and tension hung in the air. And before they could do anything, Hong suddenly appeared. His eyes burned with hatred and his voice sounded threatening. He promised to end Jake by any means necessary. Hong rushed forward, intending to get the black box that contained divine-level items. However, he was well aware that even with his power, he could not overcome absolute evil alone. Jake, using his sky-high stepping skills, easily intercepted the box before Hong could get to it. Without wasting a second, Hong pulled out a knife and stabbed. The blade went straight into Jake's stomach. It was indeed the dagger of heavenly punishment, a divine-level item capable of removing the target after striking. But contrary to Hoon's expectations, Jake remained perfectly fine. Even his black armor could not stop this weapon. But the reason for his survival was another artifact, the Guardian's necklace. This divine-ranked item allowed him to repel the deadly attack. Jake, without wasting a moment, pulled out a huge sword, hinting that it also has a deletion function. Fearing the possible consequences, Hong hesitated. That moment was enough. Jake struck a simple but accurate blow that led to the death of a heroic player. Everything that happened was recorded on camera with the help of Randall. This video became a strong compromising evidence against Hun, because according to official data, he was supposed to be in prison. Returning to the Taurus fortress with his team, Jake brought with him a huge amount of wealth, gold and items of the highest level. He instructed Jessica to start editing the video footage, preparing to use it to his advantage. But his main goal was not personal enrichment. Jake decided to use the proceeds to create a fund that would help families affected by the Monster Gate incident. He donated about $500 billion and established the welfare fund. Consultants were hired to help the victims of the disaster. New jobs were also created for social workers. At the same time, Hong lost everything gold, divine-ranked items, and even the ability to connect to Olympus. His power, influence, and resources were destroyed. However, his last hope was to protect his grandson. After the foundation of the welfare fund, its activities gained momentum. Soon after, Jake received a call from a representative of the Minister of Employment and Labor, who demanded that the foundation's scope be reduced. Minister Key himself proposed a compromise: light regulation, resource sharing, and peaceful coexistence. However, Jake replied that the minister should not order him around, but rather thank him from the bottom of his heart. This conversation made him think, if the minister behaves like this, how deep is the corruption in the government? Key, in turn, hoped that he could convince Jake to make concessions. He was well aware that if the higher-ups found out about his failure, it would have serious consequences for him. Meanwhile, Key passed on important information to Karma. Jake doesn't have the makings of a nobleman. This information led Karma to conclude that it was time to get rid of unnecessary items. He realized that he had overestimated the power of the fourth and fifth holy thrones of the Heavenly Lord. Unlike absolute evil, the power of the holy thrones had no limits and could grow infinitely through the completion of quests. If they reached the limit of their growth and joined forces, even the absolute evil would not be able to resist them. However, instead of uniting, they acted individually and, as a result, were defeated. This created ideal conditions for the growth of absolute evil. In response to Karma's reproaches, the Holy See began to make excuses, claiming that if it had intervened earlier, nothing of the sort would have happened. But Karma did not listen to their complaints and silenced them with the help of magic. The real reason why he accepted them into the ranks of the sons of the heavenly ruler was not because of their kinship, but because of their awareness of what was happening. Now he has made the final decision. To strengthen the organization, he will take the first, second, and sixth holy thrones for himself. But first of all, you need to get rid of rotten branches. Kang, who was in prison, died suddenly, and the cause of his death remained unknown. His grief-stricken grandfather had no doubt that someone's hand was behind it, trying to cover their tracks. Realizing that the matter was unclean, he went to Karma, wanting to know what he had heard about what had happened. Hong, who by all rights should have been in prison, ended up here. He didn't come for an explanation. He came for the truth. He asked Karma a direct question. Why did he kill his grandson? However, he never received a response. Hong, unable to control his emotions, tried to attack Karma with a knife, but his attempt failed. Before he could do anything, a flurry of flying blades came at him from behind Karma. The next second, it was all over. Karma dealt with the attacker without further ado, believing that one should not keep a dog that bites its master. Then he ordered his servant to dispose of the body as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, Blueheart, the director of the Grand Union and a representative of the Elin Union, was carefully studying the latest news. Hun's sudden removal made her think about her own safety. If someone removed him, it could soon be her turn. It was more than a coincidence. In this regard, an emergency meeting of the board was convened. The discussion continued, but no solution was found. They could not push the absolute evil to the wall, neither through a fight nor through money. All they could do was look for alternative ways. However, even those present were not sure that their resources could make a difference. Meanwhile, Jake was officially crowned Lord Rapto, taking control of all the Divine Star feuds. He wasn't about to leave them in chaos and immediately ordered Ju and Randall to clean up the mess before returning. Surdy, one of his people, presented a report that described Ellen's strange actions. Nevertheless, the Union took unexpected steps that allowed it to establish close ties with the Grand Duke of the Empire, Erfis. This person had enormous power, and his support could significantly change the balance of power. In addition, the Hellenic Union received special quests from him and access to powerful weapons, including siege weapons and star weapons. Jake realized that all of this was leading to the inevitable war. They had to prepare for a clash that could change the fate of the world. However, the most disturbing thing about Surdy's report was something else. Allied forces were completing quests that consisted of attacking peasant villages and kidnapping young players. Using them as bribery, they tried to gain support. This meant one thing: players became targets for attacks. The Olympus was silent, broken only by the heavy footsteps of a few people. The man holding the sword suddenly felt a damp cloth pressed against his face. He lost consciousness. His weapon fell to the floor with a dull sound. The system immediately forced him out of the game. When he woke up, he tried to call the police, but blood was pouring out of his body. Pain stiffened his movements, and he could not even move. All I could do was scream, calling for someone to call an ambulance. Another man watched from the sidelines, nodded with satisfaction, and contacted the director. The experiment was a success. Meanwhile, in Prunus, the people gave their lord a warm welcome. Jake's influence on the development of the territory was enormous. Under his leadership, the farmland has expanded and the quality of the soil has improved significantly. After another promotion, a sculpture identical to the altar in Non appeared in the city center as a symbol of growth and prosperity. However, despite the successes, there was still one disturbing piece of news. The players who had been attacked by Ellen and the Grand Duke had not yet been found. Jake did not understand what exactly had happened to them. He instructed Serda to let him know immediately if any information came to light. In addition, economic issues arose. With the expansion of the territory, it was necessary to revise the tax policy. However, after analyzing the financial situation, Jake concluded that the incoming payments were sufficient and no adjustments were needed. This news caused a storm of joy among the people. People started singing and dancing in the streets to express their gratitude. The joy of the residents also affected Jake himself. He was suddenly promoted. The new level brought him a powerful skill, global area detection. Wanting to experience it immediately, Jake activated the ability. He immediately felt a powerful source of energy 12 kilometers west of Velika Pruna. There, in the volcano's crater, something unusual was happening. Blueheart and Lamian were preparing an attack. They deployed siege weapons of the 4th rank, Shay. Their plan was simple: to destroy the castle walls in 2 stages and then strike a precise blow at absolute evil. Unexpectedly, new information came in. The target of the attack had changed. Now Shay was reconfigured to attack from close range. The first stage of the attack was completed and the main mechanism was activated. A bright green beam burst out of the installation, rushing straight toward the Lord. But Jake wasn't going to sit idly by. Using his magic, he stopped the attack and made a decision. This strike was a declaration of war. He did not hesitate to respond in kind, and the war with the Hellenic Union began. Jake single-handedly destroyed 3 barrels of siege weapons and 60 mages. No spells harmed him thanks to the effect of the necklace. Not wanting to waste time, he decided to turn back, completing his attack. Blueheart could not understand how Jake had located Shay and managed to take a direct hit without a scratch. But what was even more surprising was that he had openly declared war on them. Soon a servant came to her with more disturbing news. Another player had died, a victim of tribute. Her thoughts were confused and she could not realize what exactly this mad Grand Duke was doing. In the end, she ordered me to contact the right people and tell them that the Union was officially offering cooperation. Meanwhile, Jake arrived in Great Nan. He activated the Flame of Nana, thus satisfying the conditions of the hidden part of the task. The conditions called for the need to strengthen divine-ranked items, which required 7 trillion gold coins and 2 black stones. After a while, Jessica arrived. Jake handed her a pair of rings. However, in order to activate it, the set effect had to be activated, which meant that the system had to recognize them as a pair. Hearing this, Jessica did not hesitate to kiss Jake. Both were confused, but decided to test the effect of the ring. As a result, they have become virtually invulnerable to attacks related to the fire attribute. Jessica was pleased not only with this, but also with the fact that now Jake would punish anyone who dared to harm her. At this time, a meeting of the Grand Alliance was taking place. Hellenes made a proposal emphasizing that they had only 2 options left. Either absolute evil would fall first, or they would. It insisted on an all-out war against him, believing that this was the only way to protect their existence. As a result, a decision was made. The Union must destroy Jake at all costs. A few days later, the Hellenic Union launched an attack on the Prunus. Jake didn't know whether this was a desperate attempt by the enemy, who realized there was no turning back, or whether they had a plan to defeat him. Meanwhile, Chan's camera was recording what was happening, but it was suddenly attacked. The enemies were a tank division encased in strong metal armor. Jake quickly assessed the enemy's strength. There were about 50,000 of them. Jessica was worried about him, but he remained calm. This time he decided to fight without using the Mercury Strike. He ordered everyone to get ready. The castle gates opened, and only 3 people entered the battlefield: himself, Jessica, and Randall. The president of the Handel Union, a man named Junior, was stunned to see only 3 opponents in front of him. However, his advisor, known as the Blueheart, warned him that absolute evil was not just a title but a designation of a player with real power. When Junior found out that it was Jake who came out of the gate, he immediately ordered the tank units to take up combat positions. On command, the enemy opened fire. A deafening roar filled the battlefield and the shells moved toward Jake. However, he activated the defense of the evil god, and the attack turned out to be pointless. When he stopped in front of his enemies, he demanded an explanation of the reason for the attack. However, there was no response. Junior decided to stall for time while his mages prepared 3 barrels of level 4 anti-personnel weapons. By order of the Blue Heart, the powerful weapon was activated. A colossal stream of fire erupted from the ground, illuminating the battlefield with a blinding glow. It was a spectacle that shook the earth, capable of incinerating anyone who found themselves in the zone of defeat. However, the ring that protects Jake's body completely neutralized the attack. He didn't get a single scratch. Junior, irritated by the ineffectiveness of his attacks, lunged into action, accusing Jake of disturbing the peace. But he was ready to respond. Jake decided to teach him a lesson and jumped into the fray. The blond man looked at Jake closely. declaring with undisguised interest that he was quite his type. However, Jake was not going to waste time on idle talk. He was too lazy to get into an argument, so he suggested that the man go straight to the fight. It turned out that this man was the president of the Esgai Union. His goal was clear: to obtain absolute evil. At first, he targeted Jessica. Jessica tried to defend herself, but the enemy's forces were large. Randall, noticing the attack on her, became enraged. Who dared to attack the right hand of absolute evil? He rushed into battle, ready to protect her at all costs. Luckily, thanks to the Guardian's necklace, Jessica was able to withstand the blow, taking only half the damage. However, the situation remained tense. Jake decided to take the time to deal with the white-haired man himself. He activated the Inferno Flame skill, releasing destructive energy. The president's allies were alarmed. A huge magical force vibrated in the air, growing on a scale beyond their comprehension. The troops were immediately ordered to take up defensive positions. However, they had to hastily retreat in the face of impending danger. Meanwhile, Blueheart has already started preparing for the next stage of the plan. At the same time, the head of the Union officially announced a hunt for Jake, intending to make him his warrior. This irritated Jake. He was neither going to obey nor tolerate someone's intrusiveness. Soon he mercilessly dealt with the white-haired man. Wasting no time, Jessica summoned her death soldiers and forcibly revived the enemy as the undead. Now he was completely under her control. Her determination and cool approach to the situation was impressive. But the battle was not over. Jake felt a magical force coming from far away. The next moment, a powerful accumulative magic, the Water Dragon's Breath, was directed at him. This spell was cast by Lamian. Jake quickly reacted by activating the evil god's defense. Soon after, he struck back using the 1,000 lightning strikes. His swift movements easily rushed through the enemy ranks, destroying the soldiers under Lamian's command. In the midst of the battle, Jake heard a whisper from Hardy. The message was alarming. The enemy was now inside the castle. Surrounded on all sides, Pruna was under massive attack. The Unions blocked communication, preventing them from requesting help, and began storming the castle walls. However, Charity was prepared for this development. She had already prepared a plan in advance to deal with such a threat. 7 major alliances came together, so the attack promised to be large-scale. Meanwhile, Jake, seeing Coco's appearance, immediately ordered her to return to Pruna. He activated the skill Heaven-Conquering Footsteps, intending to get there as quickly as possible. But suddenly his movement was interrupted by a black cube. At the same moment, the Hellenic Union managed to capture absolute evil. Everything went according to their plan. The black cube turned out to be the Black Prison, a trap specially created by the Grand Alliance to detain Jake. The situation was under the control of the Hellenic Union. Once inside, Jake quickly realized that he was imprisoned in a special space. However, he was not going to put up with this. He immediately called for Taurus's cavalry, estimating that it would take them only 30 seconds to break through the barrier. But that was too long. Using the space and evil encouragement skills, he reduced the destruction time to 10 seconds. The cavalry raised their spears, preparing to deliver a devastating blow. Combining their efforts, they began to break through the trap. Cracks soon appeared on the surface of the cube and grew rapidly. In a moment, Jake and the cavalry were free. When Blueheart saw this, it was very shocked. She couldn't believe that the carefully prepared trap was powerless in front of Jake. Meanwhile, the president of the Grand Union, Jian, known as the Real Man, realized that he would have to confront Jake personally. They had to hold him back at all costs to gain time for siege weapons. However, Jake was moving at such a fast pace that it was almost impossible to record his movements. Nevertheless, the plan of the Hellenic Union was already being successfully implemented. The 4th-ranked siege weapons managed to fire 2 volleys at Pruna, but their attack missed the target. Jake was faster than the shells. There was a powerful explosion in the air. He did not expect the enemy to be able to organize such an attack. Now he was ready to respond with all his might. From a bird's-eye view, Jessica and Randall watched the battlefield, amazed at what was happening. Jake had already reached the fortress wall and managed to deliver the decisive blow. Using Mercury's super punch, he crushed his enemies. However, the enemy commander was not going to give up. He ordered a final salvo, hoping that precise coordination of the attack would ensure their victory. But Jake didn't give his enemies a chance. As soon as he noticed the preparations for the attack, he used his skill again, completely repelling all the attacks of the enemies. The outcome was obvious. All the Union presidents were crushingly defeated. Cries of admiration were heard on the battlefield. Everyone who saw what was happening praised Jake, recognizing his incomparable strength. The alliances that planned to win faced a complete disaster. Their plans failed, and now they were faced with the terrible reality that if they did not stop absolute evil, everyone would die. But the situation was getting even worse. alarming news came in. The player Zhong, who had previously been handed over to the Grand Duke, managed to escape. He was subjected to horrific biological experiments and torture that lasted several days. Exhausted and barely alive, he reached Jake's castle and discovered the terrible truth. Ellen was involved in this nightmare. Jake was shocked by what he heard. Not only Jiang, but also many other abductees were in Herzog's hands. Realizing the gravity of the situation, Jake thanked Chan for his courage. Now he will investigate the case himself and find the perpetrators. After logging out of the system, Chan will be sent to a residence prepared for him, where he will receive the necessary assistance. But that was not the end of the matter. Jake ordered Ju to organize an offline meeting with the union's president, Jin. It's time to deliver the final blow. The Great Union must fall not only in the game, but in reality. The time has come to rid this world of all its rot. An emergency meeting with Randall and the union's president, Jean, was held immediately after receiving information about the Grand Duke's ties to Ellen. Both officials are determined to investigate the atrocities they committed. They also took an active part in the protection of victims. Meanwhile, Jake's side had to find the Grand Duke. The maximum level of notoriety reached by Jake activated an altar that responds to numerical reputation. This meant the end of the quest. Black flames symbolizing Schulter's descendants flared up, causing Jake to experience real fear. However, at the moment, the flame was in an invisible state, accessible only to the eyes of absolute evil. For camouflage, one black stone was used every 168 hours. After consuming the stone, he changed the color of the flame. The flames affected the feud. The level of possessions increased, and the fortress wall began to restore automatically. At this time, Blueheart became enraged, realizing that it was only a matter of time before the Grand Duke-related project was revealed. As a retaliatory action, she was offered to set a fire in the apartment where their enemies were staying. Soon, a new report came in. A large deposit was discovered near the feudal lord's control. This resulted in a significant increase in the chance of rare and more valuable items falling out, by more than 50%. This change actually meant the opening of a new season at Olympus. Agatha was happy to see them working as a team again after all this time. However, despite the need to complete the quest, the situation began to heat up. The entrance to the territory was completely blocked with the help of 5th-level defensive weapons. Jake had to use force to break through. The cries of the Blueheart were heard from the top of the castle. Jake realized that she had illegally occupied his hunting grounds and decided not to let it go unpunished. Using a super-destructive punch, he concentrated all the force of the attack in one point. At this time, Panda and Randall watched what was happening, feeling the pride of the Lord. The destroyed wall was restored instantly, which led to the activation of the 4th-level defensive weapon. Lamian, in turn, threatened to rub the Absolute's nose in preparation for the next battle. The Zipper attribute has been set. Verdi only slightly adjusted the mana flow to prepare the attack. At this point, Lamian signaled for the battle to begin, but before the shot was fired, Verdi suddenly changed the attribute to fire. Jake instantly fired fireballs, destroying the enemies with one strong blow. Verdi could not contain her joy and jumped for joy. Randall took advantage of the situation and took Lamiana's mantle as a trophy. Meanwhile, Surti reported to Jake that an unknown force had raided Pruna in his absence. The attackers thought that the fortress was about to fall, but after a few blows, they realized that it was pointless and retreated. By the time their operation was foiled, the outcome of the battle had already been decided. Thanks to the fortified walls, the enemies were unable to do any damage to the fortress. After that, Jake and his team headed to the Valley of Fire. This place had enormous privileges, and it was obvious that expeditions from other continents would soon begin to arrive here. Panda said he would follow them while remaining in stealth mode. Unable to withstand the unbearable heat, the team stayed at the beginning of the journey and Jake and Jessica went on. They discovered the source of fire, the key point of the valley. However, to enter the Temple of Fire, he needed level 85, which Jake did not yet have. So he decided that Jessica would go hunting with Agatha, and he would level up. At this time, Blueheart learned that Esge had left their alliance. The reason was that he had fallen in love with Jake and was now looking for another way to get him. They decided to take a neutral position, pretending to know nothing about the Grand Duke. Soon after, a message came that Jake had appeared in the hunting grounds of the Highlands. He methodically followed all the monsters, intending to use them to level up quickly. Agatha suddenly asked Jake to disconnect from Olympus for a while. The reason was serious. An unexpected guest came to their home. It was Kang, the former director of the Divine Star Society. He said that he would die here, but Jake did not understand what he was saying. To show that he was not going to attack, Khan put on handcuffs himself. He began to talk about the Lady and the Holy See, and his words confirmed Jake's fears. Kang was a member of the Sons of the Heavenly Ruler Guild and was going to tell us about its leader, Karma. This person controlled large unions and had influence on high-ranking government officials. Suddenly, Khan felt sick. It was the power of karma which works even in the real world. He explained that this is a curse. If someone betrays karma, they will not be able to escape. They will be overtaken by death. In pain, Khan told us about a secret space under the building of the Divine Star where an important object is located. He begged not to let karma take possession of this artifact. After saying this, he died. Jake immediately contacted Union President Jong Jin and Randall. Randall suggested that political circles would try to hush up the case. The NZ Union itself had never dealt with karma, but other presidents and directors of large unions were aware of it. Jake wondered if karma was so dangerous that he could easily eliminate the Divine Star. According to Kang, he went to the old Divine Star Union vault. There, he managed to get several items, including a huge piece with a reserve of experience points, the result of the Union's research. Thanks to this, Jake gained a huge amount of experience and raised his level to 90. Later, the head of the NZ Union asked what Jake thought of his granddaughter, Ju. However, he replied that he already had someone he liked. The next day, Jake and Jessica visited the Temple of Fire. He quickly cleared the Valley of Fire, after which the hidden part of the dungeon was activated. Mr. Inferno's great servant, the boss monster of the Temple of Fire, a priestess named Ifrit, woke up. But this time, the conditions were special. Ifrit had provoked him in the temple, and now he had to find and kill her in 2 hours. If he fails to complete this task, he will lose the class of absolute evil forever. The Temple of Fire began to collapse, and with it the only way back was disappearing. The entrance through which they entered collapsed, cutting off the path to retreat. The system threatened to remove them from the game, frightening everyone inside. Jessica grabbed Jake's sleeve in a panic, not knowing what to do next. However, he remained calm and knew that he would complete the quest. Suddenly, Panda appeared. He assured me that he would help me get out and offered to rely on him. Using his unique experience as a tracker, emergency rescue, he instantly teleported them outside the temple. At the same moment, the ring on Jake's hand lit up, indicating the direction. He did not hesitate and immediately moved forward. After many movements, Ifrit finally reached a point where the strong and stable energy of Mr. Inferno was felt. This place turned out to be Jake's castle. From the top of the walls, Hardy watched the situation, assessing what was happening. She immediately ordered everyone to evacuate to the inner castle, anticipating a possible threat. Meanwhile, Ifrit has moved into the agricultural sector. She decided to take over the territory and burn everything to the ground in order to build a new temple of Mr. Inferno on the site. However, her plans were not destined to come true as Jake stood in the way. His sudden appearance made her angry. She did not understand how he managed to free himself and get out of the temple, but her surprise was replaced by shock when she looked at him more closely. She saw Mr. Inferno in his image. Before Ifrit could realize what was happening, Jake attacked. He didn't hesitate and started the fight, delivering precise and powerful blows. The fiery lady couldn't resist for long, and Jake quickly defeated her. Meanwhile, Jessica used her power to resurrect her fallen enemy. After becoming Jessica's undead, Ifrit started a new life, leaving the past behind. All quests have been successfully completed. Now it's time to check the reward. An absolute evil planned to destroy the top-class hunting grounds that were the pride of the Handel Union. However, he had to wait 3 months for his monsters to recover again. At that moment, a man came to him with a message. Mr. Karma offered to meet him. They accepted the offer and arrived at Karma's lair. From that moment on, he pledged to assist them in apprehending the absolute evil. In exchange, he gave them special power, demanding results in return. Any failure or betrayal meant certain death for the applicants. Meanwhile, Jake started checking the awards. He received a special outfit, and his level rose to 96. In addition, he got a new skill called In Pursuit of Evil, as well as the strength of the fire, which was revealed by the reaction of the double ring to its intimidation. Soon Agatha came to him with important news. There have been changes among those who sit on the holy thrones. The owners of the first, second, and sixth thrones have changed at the same time. The situation forced her to reconsider her plans. Now she has finally decided not to cross paths with these forces and to follow Jake completely. Jake suggested that the change of thrones was the fault of karma. To prepare for the possible consequences, he gathered the world's rankers and explained the current situation. Among them, Randall expressed his readiness to support him under any circumstances. Using his powers, Jake created a new pet, a level 70 hellhound. After Ifrit became Jessica's soldier, creatures known as hellhounds began to appear in the space saturated with fiery energy. Killing them brought a high chance of a red stone falling out. To ensure a steady flow of this valuable resource, Jake established a ranch near the Valley of Fire. Upon learning about this, many people immediately expressed a desire to cooperate with him. Soon Jake heard a whisper from Verdi. All 4 cars in the Taurus suddenly broke down. The source of this problem turned out to be the third Holy See, the handyman of Gyeonghyun. In addition to him, the first Holy See, the executioner of the heavenly beast Eugene, also showed her power. Karma could not allow absolute evil to go unpunished. His patience was gone, and he ordered the first and third Holy Thrones to launch a surprise attack on the enemy's territory. These two were his daughter's students and thus had to work in a coordinated and efficient manner. Meanwhile, Eugene's dragons launched a fierce attack on the castle, trying to destroy its defenses. However, Verdi desperately resisted, defending the fortress at the cost of her own strength. Eugene used her incredible power to activate the executioner's skill and deploy the sacred execution field. While the battle was raging on the battlefield, the handyman was hiding in the shadows, using his camouflage skills. His goal was clear: to capture the dragoon defended by Verdi. Despite her fatigue and exhaustion, she continued to stand in the way of the enemy, fighting to the last. Verdi, already on the verge of death, gathered the remnants of her strength and released her fiery flame, directing it at the dragons. It was unable to destroy them completely but caused serious damage while trying to hold the line of defense. However, Eugene did not allow her to regain her strength. Her skills allowed her to instantly heal the wounded dragon, returning it to service. After collecting her thoughts, Eugene gave an order to her dragons to destroy Verdi. Realizing that she was running out of strength, Verdi decided to bide her time and lure the dragons to the place of the Lord, hoping to buy at least a little time. But her plan failed, and soon the enemy surrounded her from all sides. Her mana was exhausted, she could no longer repel the attacks, and the Eugene dragons were inexorably approaching. Realizing that the outcome of the battle was preordained, Verdi accepted her fate and began to say goodbye to her life. But just when she thought everything was over, Jake appeared. His sudden intervention ruined the enemy's plans, and Verdi was safe. Jake decided to deal with everything on his own and asked Verdi to stay away. He was ready to fight when Eugene called her dragons, pointing them at him. However, using the skill steps that conquer the heavens, he easily dealt with them. The battle turned out to be disappointingly simple. The dragons fell from just one blow. Realizing the difference in strength, Eugene ran away in fear. Meanwhile, the dragoon's defense was broken, and soon Eugene returned, warning that it was time to retreat. But Jake had already detected the presence of the second throne with the help of his spiritual eye. He realized that he hadn't stopped dealing with the dragoon yet and asked Eugene to buy him some time. However, when it became clear that the dragons had been defeated, the enemy used the absolute warp skill, instantly disappearing. But Jake managed to activate the power of ignition, inflicting continuous fire damage on the enemy. The system soon confirmed its success. 2 holy thrones were destroyed. As a reward, he gained a huge amount of experience, reaching level 99. A tremendous power emanated from him, filling the space around him with energy. Suddenly, a new message from the system appeared. He received a quest called Absolute Evil against the 7 Holy Thrones. The news of the defeat of the 2 Holy Thrones quickly reached the sisters. One of them took it as a challenge and vowed revenge in the near future. Her plans were ambitious: to get a new legion as a special bonus as soon as she reached the 100th level. However, the other sister was puzzled by her words and clearly had doubts. Meanwhile, the Imperial Intelligence Service was actively discussing recent events. The incident with the 2 monster bosses and the absolute evil caught the attention of the head of intelligence, who ordered continued surveillance. They were in no hurry to intervene, waiting for the right moment. The Great War was coming, a war that could change the fate of 2 continents. According to the predictions, absolute evil was to overthrow the Holy Thrones, and the 7 Holy Thrones were to overthrow absolute evil. However, Jake's primary task was to restore the Taurus Fortress. The work was going on at a fast pace. To increase the strength of the structure, the 9th Elder Panda was sent, who had the necessary knowledge to strengthen the defense. But in the midst of the restoration work, an incident occurred. Characters belonging to absolute evil were massively deleted. Their destruction was sanctioned by the Holy See, which stated that they should be sacrificed to catch absolute evil. A few days later, the Hellhound Ranch was completely completed. The Valley of Fire, originally a dangerous place, has now become a source of an endless supply of red stone, and its landscape has been filled with fire. Soon a new boss monster appeared on the territory, the Hell King Gonchak. However, Jake quickly dealt with him, demonstrating his absolute superiority. As soon as the battle was over, Coco's attention was drawn to a red stone. Without hesitation, he immediately threw himself at it, intending to eat it. But the question remained: how safe it was for him to absorb such a dangerous and powerful resource. Suddenly, an ominous presence was heard over the area. The 5th Holy Throne, June, arrived. Her intentions were obvious. She came to destroy Jake.